a city says siasa imechacha, so we're looking at the chacha side of the siasa. And we also know that mvua imeanza kuchacha, and what that means is floods are back. Experts are telling us that yes, in the last couple of years, we've actually seen a serious increase in incidences of flooding around in the country. And we know, and we must remind everybody, that we have lakes that are swollen. And because of that, people have been displaced. Because of that, there are children who actually are going to new environments called schools where they haven't been before, because they even live in different places than they lived before. So we're going to have that whole conversation about the swollen lakes of the Republic of Kenya and what's happening, what's being done about that. That's coming up all in the show today. We'll also be tracking where we are with this quest to get our vaccines into the country and how we're dealing with COVID-19 spread. So let's start there, Ndu.
Let's. All right. So let's look at global numbers first before we come and talk about what the Ministry of Health has said is absolutely necessary for travelers in and out of Kenya concerning COVID-19. 91,315,062. That's what we're looking at in terms of global numbers today. That's the number now. Deaths are now at 1,952,879. Looking at the numbers that come from different countries in the world, specifically the USA now at 23 million, India still at 10 million, not rising too quickly. But just looking at the US has 23 million cases, India has 10 million cases, has double the number of the second plus 3 million. It's a big number, and still continuing to suffer from the brunt of this. Mexico, if you want to look at another country that's really, really being pummeled by this, yesterday they recorded 8,000 new cases of COVID with unfortunately 662 deaths. So the numbers continue to rise around the world. Okay, the UK still as well recording high numbers, now at 3 million. Last week they were at 2 million and some odd, just getting to 2,800,000 as of Wednesday last week, and now having crossed that line to 118,518 cases. Okay, so it's still, and now the UK is dealing with this second strain and looking at the fact that it's spreading rapidly and not quite sure what to do about this. Going to increase the time of the lockdown? Probably so. Currently standing at the 10th of March this year is when the lockdown is likely to cease in the UK. But from all indications, they're still bearing this pretty hard and not quite sure, what to do. The vaccine rollout has begun in the UK and people have started receiving it, and they hope to ramp up their efforts as much as they can. Also, vaccine rollout continues in the United States and many other countries around the world, and everybody is trying to make sure that they get this, but still dealing with quite a number of people who are infected with COVID-19. If we look at cases around the continent, still recording cases, but still relatively low in terms of what is happening. You will now need a digital health pass to leave or enter Kenya. All inbound and outbound travelers to Kenya will be required to have what is called a TT, Traveler Trust Traveler Initiative. That's what it is, right? And in line with the Africa CDC, Center for Disease Control, an online system has been designed to authenticate and verify travelers' COVID-19 certificates. So no Kenyan lab will issue COVID-19 certificates without the TT codes. And if you don't have that, because it's now digital, if you don't have that, then you will not be able to leave or enter the country. Those countries who've not gotten on this system yet will have what they call a toll. So either way, they'll be able to tell. So once you get your test results, it's entered into this system and you receive a text message, or your QR code will then be able to find that. As of the 11th of January, which was yesterday, this is when this took effect, and being rolled out now. So no lab will issue a certificate, whether positive or negative, without the trusted travel code. That's what's happening now in terms of international travel.
Okay. Okay. And then now when the vaccine comes again, you get the vaccine code.
Yes, that you have been vaccinated, kind of like a yellow fever, yellow card.
Right.
Yes.
The new strain of COVID-19 is actually causing serious worries.
Yes.
But remember, it is worries that are now compounding the previous worries. A lot of the information that we had about COVID-19 had to do with what was known then. Now, when you have a new strain, it means you then have to figure this one out as well. And right now, in addition to simply fighting the very nature of it, fast spreading among other things, they now have to figure out what it's actually all about. And the reality is the vaccines that we currently have, you cannot say with certainty. You can say, hopefully, it will be able to contain this particular strain, but with certainty, you cannot.
And you know the thing is, TT, and I was looking at some reports yesterday. I tried to reconfirm them, but it just looks like across the UK, the different media outlets are talking about the fact that this strain has people showing up to hospital at a quicker rate with symptoms, and this is what is really worrying them, and worrying others where the strain has been cited. That whereas with the first strain of COVID, maybe people would have symptoms and they would be able to sit at home for some time and get, on-call health care. However, with this now, people are having to report to hospital at a quicker rate. And so that's why you see now that it gets filled up pretty quickly. So I think maybe that's one of the worrying factors, that the downtime between when you get sick and then you're found positive, things start to deteriorate much quicker than they did in the first instance.
See, this process that we call falling sick because of the virus is actually the virus propagating itself. All right? Now, remember there was talk about herd immunity in the early days, and there are countries that experimented with herd immunity with, should we say, differing results. Okay, but right now, even the WHO is stating categorically that the issue of herd immunity this year, as we see it, put on hold. This virus is actually causing serious jitters, this new strain.
How many new strains do we have?
There's the second one. There's only one right now.
So the South African strain is similar to the UK strain?
Yes, it is. But remember, if we talk broadly about viruses, let's talk about the flu virus. Now, the flu virus is something that those who deal with this on a yearly basis because of climate change and the things that help bring about this particular, or should we say increases flu virus, they are accustomed to these mutations. And they even know the number of strains that you have. And countries will tell you they have, there's a variety of it. And that's why with every passing year, you get a new flu shot. Strengthened, fortified, maybe with vitamin Z. But something that will give your immune system the sort of boost and the sort of jolt that it actually requires for it to be able to cope with the new strain. This is a living organism. What we are calling mutation is the virus seeking to survive, because it senses, I would not say thinks and knows, so I'll just say senses. The best I can get to it, that it's about to be destroyed. So it also does its thing. And in doing its thing, we get a new strain, which means it has found a new way of surviving and living longer. And remember, this virus doesn't live in plants,
Humans.
Human beings. But you would say, if we were to talk about early findings, it was in mammals, really.
How many other countries have detected this new strain spreading in the country?
Also, we saw the UK, we've seen Spain and South Africa and Italy.
Those 4 so far?
Yes.
Yes. But the findings have to do more with the serious surveillance programs that these countries have. You need to be surveying and checking and determining and testing and testing and testing. And for you to, if you don't, the strain may be with you, but you have no clue.
But you have no clue.
Yes.
You can imagine the other countries around Europe, like France and Germany, are also doing the same kind of vigorous checking and monitoring.
Yeah.
But they haven't detected this.
Not quite.
So across the channel, it hasn't actually been detected in France.
No.
But it has been detected in South Africa.
Yes.
How would you explain that?
Travel.
Yeah, but travel is everywhere. It's global.
Yes, travel is global. But if you go by the first
I can imagine
indicators of
travel
how-
between the UK and South Africa, and the travel between the UK and France.
No, it isn't so much the stream or the frequency of travel. I'm simply pinpointing the culprit. Because unless you are saying that this particular virus is native to South Africa and that it mutated, and actually South Africa have their own strain of this strain, I am saying that if I were to go by the early findings of COVID and how it spread, it was through travel. Somebody who was COVID positive traveled to one place, and because of that, the infection spread. And this, I think, was confirmed beyond a doubt when we had the summer months in the West. Because that's when the virus now just had a field day. It proliferated beyond imagination.
Yep.
And right now, we're still suffering from the effects of that. And this was not unforeseen. Again, travel.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned travel.
I can see the travel. What I'm trying to understand is the disparity in terms of there's global travel, there is global spread of the virus, and then there is this particular jump of this particular vaccine. Like hops from here into that other place and spreads there, but has not hopped into other countries.
Let's start from the beginning and perhaps consider that for it to mutate, it has to exist.
Yep.
So it was probably there. Now, I have not come across any scientific findings as to how it has mutated and what it has actually become.
And where it mutated first.
Yes, because it could very well have simply mutated in South Africa. There's nothing stopping it. Because if you remember, the spread of COVID in South Africa was actually fairly rapid and high. In fact, the proportions were alarming, if you think about it. On this continent,
Yep.
it was alarming. So, again, those are things that we are yet to find out. But the question is a valid one. Like you, I will seek to try and understand more as I read more.
As
Yes.
it comes out, sure.
All right. At 6:15, this is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Time for us to take a break and see what's happening in terms of the weather. And then we'll look at the headlines in the papers this morning. Wherever you are, the live stream is up, Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. Say hello to us, and then we'll be also saying hello to you. We're also live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning.
Have you seen them? Am I live?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Evan Wasingishi was asking me what channel is Spice FM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
The weather with Spice FM.
Okay, let's look at this morning where we're seeing some showers in Nairobi. We will see through the day highs of 26, currently at 16 and partly cloudy conditions. The rain might continue through most parts of the morning. In Nakuru, 15 degrees currently and cloudy conditions. Looking then out towards Nyeri, where also cloudy conditions at 13 this morning. A chance of rain there later. Eldoret at 12. We will see cloudy conditions through most of today. In Kisumu this morning, 21 degrees and partly cloudy, going to highs of 30. Kakamega, 18 degrees at the moment. Cloudy conditions still dark this morning, and we'll see how that proceeds throughout the day. In Mombasa, chance of rain here and there. Cloudy conditions at 25, rising to highs of 32. Looking at Malindi, where we also see cloudy conditions at 23, going then to a high of 31. All right, out into Kampala. Today, 20 and partly cloudy. Looking at Dar es Salaam, highs of 32 today. Excuse me. Johannesburg, as we look out, it's cloudy conditions at 15 degrees. Kinshasa, cloudy this morning at 24. Likelihood of rain later. And in Lagos, 26 degrees. And we'll see highs of 32. It's freezing in Beijing this morning, looking out east. Going into the afternoon, they're going to be at lows of minus 10 today. And then out into Paris, we'll see highs of 11, but it will still be quite cold because currently at 0. It's also at 0 in London today with a chance of rain later combining with the snow. It's turning into sleet, taking only to highs of 3. And for now, into New York, where it's still Monday night, coming into Tuesday morning, we'll see highs of 3 and lows of 1.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
Very
Nairobi.
good morning to you wherever you are. Who is online? I can see Faristo Muganda. Waibubere Mumias niko ndani ya mpango hadi mwisho. Live streaming on Spice FM KE on Facebook. Kev Santana, good morning folks. Nanyuki is watching. We tiptoed around and finally accepted the debt service suspension initiative. Yes, but only for 6 months, bro. Dagi Oguta, good morning Situation Room. Tuning from Lake Victoria today. It's a great show indeed, my people. Yes, morning guys. Tuning from Kapsabet is Wilson Kipkoech. Moses Gashari in Juja. Hello. Charles Maina. Oh no, that's Charity. Sorry, Charity Maina. Good morning. Melimani Nakuru. Wycliffe Ogora, we've just said, is in Kisii. Master Dan, good morning from Beijing. COVID-19 will be with us for at least up to 2025. New strains are springing out every day. Here, we've started recording new cases nearly after 7 months. After 7 months of some good tidings in Beijing, some new cases now, according to Master Dan. Paula Nisana. Robert Bogo, good morning everyone, loud and clear in Mombasa. And tuned in Utawala is Njoroge Cha. Good morning guys, tuned in. Hello everybody, welcome to the show. All right, City, today's proverb.
Yes, today's proverb, I found it a bit, well, it tickled me. In the ha-ha sense of the word. Huh? When the mouse laughs at the cat, there's a hole nearby.
When the mouse laughs at the cat, there's a hole nearby.
Yeah.
Or a dog.
Yeah.
If you watch Tom and Jerry.
Those are very violent cartoons.
I know.
Tom and Jerry.
Jerry is a troublemaker.
Very violent.
So it knows that it can easily escape.
Yes.
And you won't find him.
He'll pull all sorts of stunts knowing very well. And the hole that the mouse will go, the cat cannot even the paw might not even be able to actually even enter. So the mouse knows.
Nice.
It has an escape route.
That's a nice one. That's a nice one. So let's look for the rats, the ones that are making noise, and see where the cat is. Why Uhuru's backyard is restless. This is the headline in The Nation today. He says supporters of the handshake now fear that the political careers could be on the chopping block because of growing support for the deputy president in the region, blah, 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 blah. Story is given some coverage on page 5. It says pressure is mounting for Uhuru to name his successor. Uhuru allies front strategy they vow will annihilate Ruto in Mount Kenya. Keen not to further lose ground in Mount Kenya, Uhuru's allied leaders have divided the region into 5 blocks that will be bombarded with planned development visits by the head of state, accompanied by Mr. Peter Kenneth. Nairobi has been identified as first pool, Murang'a, Kirinyaga, Kiambu the second, Meru, Tharaka Nithi the third, Nakuru, Nyandarua the fourth, Embu, Laikipia closing the 5th compartment of the in-house battlefield.
Gee. Okay.
Where all that is happening, I've also seen another story here in the county section of The Nation, just so we just do that. Jubilee is a letdown for Meru residents, leaders say. Now, these are 9 of the 12 members of parliament who come from the Greater Meru region. They had a meeting, and they're all allied to William Ruto, so we say. So they were being led by Senator Mithika Linturi. And they said leaders from Meru accused the Jubilee administration of failing to fulfill its campaign promises in the region. in Meru, each and every constituency was promised a road. These projects have stalled, according to Moses Kerema, the Central Imenti MP. They're claiming that Meru County has suffered the most under Jubilee. They cited the country's ballooning debt and poor performance of the economy among Mr. Kenyatta's failures. The BBI may not necessarily be bad, but the issues at hand are more pertinent, according to Tigania East's Josephat Kabebea. All of them, none of them is talking about Jubilee having two leaders. But, well, who wants to get in between a good story? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Gee. Okay, so I'm going to follow up with this story, and still more details coming out. This murder that took place in Kiambu. Autopsy, killer most cruel to father and son. This is what is being reported now as the investigations continue. And we also see another headline there linked to this story within the Standard. Lovers linked to Kiambu murders held for 14 days. So now in the subhead, state pathologist in killing of 4 kin and worker in Kiambu says the 2 victims suffered the most stab wounds, showing the degree of the attacker's anger against them. The day-long post-mortem examination procedure at Kenyatta Memorial Funeral Home in Kiambu County, overseen by Chief Government Pathologist Johansen Odor, yesterday shed more light into the painful and despairing last moments of the 4 family members and 1 worker murdered in Kiambu last week. The illuminating details could be crucial in helping investigators unravel the puzzling case in which the murdered family's eldest son, Lawrence Waruinge, has been arrested and arraigned in court as a suspect. Odor told media yesterday that from his assessment, the attacker seemed especially bitter with his father, Nicholas Njoroge, and his younger son, judging by the particularly vicious nature of wounds the attacker inflicted on the 2 victims. I quote, "The person who got the most injuries was the father and son, actually. I cannot remember exactly how many, but they had very many stab wounds, like severed necks. With severed necks, I beg your pardon. It was like the person who killed the 2 was doing it with a lot of anger. He also revealed that the mother, Wanjiku Njoroge, appeared to have put up the most resistance to the attacker out of all the victims, given her broken upper arms. Odua revealed the victims resisted, especially the mother. She had broken upper arms like someone who is trying to block a blow from a blunt object. The other family members, Odua stated, had stab wounds on the hands and indicated that they were trying to block the assailant from attacking them with a sharp object. Odua also noted that from the bruises on the head of the father, it's likely he injured his head during the attack. It goes on to give more details, but then we also know that now a Kiambu court has granted police 14 days to detain Lawrence Waruinge and his girlfriend, Sarah Muthoni. They are suspects at the center of the gruesome murder. Police Inspector Peter Kamau of the Homicide Division at the DCI warned the court of the dangers of releasing the 2 before investigations were completed.
Okay, for this one, I will agree with the police in their application to hold guys.
Yeah,
especially
since this young man confessed to all this.
And they've already taken the police to places where it's clearly showing that even if you at least know something about this murder, and the fact that there are 2 other children who are still alive, and the fact that you as a child are known by the community, you're also in danger. So, if not for nothing else, just for their own safety, let them be under police protection. That I agree with. It's still very, very,
bizarre.
Yeah. It's clearly showing that if going by what the pathologist is saying, that the mom had broken arms, an indication that she was fighting off whatever blunt object she was using, then clearly she saw the guy, she saw her son, she must have said something, she must have screamed, she must have done something to alert everybody else. So probability of now the neighbors not hearing, remember this is a house with high walls and all, so there's a probability,
and it's a big compound.
Yeah, and it's a big compound as well. So that is, but other members in the household maybe must have heard something.
Sure. The police are also saying
especially by the time you hear that the younger brother was hiding under the bed, it's because he had something.
Sure. The police are also saying they're yet to ascertain whether he did this in the company of others or if he was alone. If he was alone, having killed 5 people on his own. It's a little more worrying.
What about that initial story of some motorbikes being seen, some vehicles being seen?
Those details are not being shared at the moment.
All those again are still.
It's still, those are now things that they're still trying to piece together because on the first day it was noted that if vehicles did come into the house. So now police are also trying to confirm whether Muthoni was there.
The girlfriend.
Yes, the girlfriend, whether she was there in the house, whether there were other people there.
Hey, this is going to be a tough one.
Yeah.
But the pathologist is saying the nature of the stab wounds indicates it's most likely to have been the same weapon used to stab all of them and slit their throats. There were likely two kinds of weapons. One is a blunt object that was used to hit them in the head. The other one is a sharp object that was used to slit their throats and stab them. It's likely that it is the same weapon that was used on all. This is a very, very, very...
Has there been any mention of him being taken for psychiatric?
They've applied for that now.
Applied.
The inspector, while applying to hold a gentleman and the lady, they've also applied that they take them for psychiatric evaluation.
It would be important. There's a Russian classical writer by the name of Dostoevsky. In his book Crime and Punishment, he actually explores the thinking behind criminals. Now, in the broad sense of the word. And what comes out thematically is that criminals will always find ways of punishing themselves. They commit a crime. Some will ensure that they leave clues so that they are caught. Others will outrightly do things or say things like confessing that will guarantee. Meaning, at some level, having committed the crime, they cannot bear to carry the guilt with them. It's overwhelming. And so the only thing they do is they come out with it and say, okay, this is
what I did.
Yes, and when they're arrested, they're now relieved. At least they feel that they're being punished for whatever it is that they had done wrong. Yes.
Whereas for serial killers, they just want to gloat.
Those fellows are very many eggs short of a dozen.
They just want to gloat.
Yes.
See what I did.
And that is why people who study psychology have a very clear distinction between those people, ranging from and not ending with being a sociopath to being a psychopath. Yes. Somebody who exactly doesn't really have what you call a normal connection with society. No, they don't. They don't.
Any sense of remorse at all.
No, they don't.
So anyway, let's see. When the psychiatric test is done on these two, what the experts will say. Were they mentally incapacitated at the time of committing this act, as they claim that they committed the act? Still, this is an unfolding story. We'll be keeping abreast of what's happening in that. 6:30, time for us to take a look at the roads, and then we look at other headlines. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. They are smart, they are funny, and unfailingly entertaining. They are the adults in the room, and they are here to help you be the best adult you can be.
Just to be very honest with each other here, not all of us are going to get tall, dark, and handsome. Not all of us are going to get 0.5s or chotaras. Some of us have to learn the short guys. Some of us have to learn those pot-belly people. Some of us have to learn older men or younger men.
Spice.
Don't ask your partner if he or she enjoyed it. I think the approach should always be, if she's enjoyed the journey, she will let you know.
Yeah.
She'll tell you, hey, maze, your bus is big. Mi sijaipanda basi kubwa kama hii. Juu hata hii basi, hiyo mafuta tulieka yote, imetuleta hapa vizuri. Hii basi iko na nguvu. Hii basi iko na nguvu.
Spice.
Now into a relationship, it becomes like you've stopped your life, and then now me, I am your life. You see, like, what happened to your life? What happened to you? What did you used to do?
And women are guilty about that. No,
is your wife listening to this show?
Whether it is matters of the heart, finances, or work that's weighing on your mind, worry not. The adults in the room will help you stay winning. Spice FM, Malindi.
Okay, so there's already traffic at Muthaiga, then trying to join with Thika Road. All the lights are on and blinking, and trying to get onto the major Thika Road, but it's not happening. As you approach Pangani this morning, very, very slow this morning. Everybody's out and about. We're looking at a clear highway after Safari Park all the way through to Muthaiga. However, it's not so bad. Unfortunately, there was a minor accident right at Roy Sambo near Safari Park on the highway as you go towards the CBD. So that one you have to look already at that. Kasarani Mwiki Road. All of this, by the way, is happening on Thika Road. It's building up there and it's very, very slow already there. Muthaiga to Pangani is an absolute mess. So yeah, all that on Thika Road. Let's look at Mombasa Road where it's moving also very slowly, picking up right around the SGR. It's dark, but everybody is out on the road this morning. Namanga to Kitengela, however, that's moving pretty well. We'll look at other parts of the city. It's very busy already though. JKIA to Cabanas onto General Motors, and then past that, very busy this morning. We'll take a look in a short while and give you some more details, okay? Spice FMKE on Twitter. All right, let's look at Waiaki Way as well, towards Kangemi. What's up, guys? Very busy as well. Talk to us on text 40127. We'll keep an eye on how things open up before 7.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
2067.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Since we're still looking at murder, let's just look at one. And
Right.
it's a bit worrying to me that more and more of these are being reported. In the last 6 months, if we were to do a synopsis or survey over those 6 months and how many more murders are being recorded and how it seems as if that is the option to take when you're a bit frustrated with someone to take their life, then yeah, it's a bit worrying. A foreigner suspected of killing a lawyer Koki detained for 2 weeks. Koki? The main suspect in the killing of advocate Elizabeth Koki Musyoki was yesterday arraigned in the Mavoko Law Court in Machakos County. Christian Mwambe Kadima appeared before Principal Magistrate Bernard Kasavuli, where the prosecution sought 14 days to complete investigations into the killing. Kasavuli granted the request by the prosecution and ordered that the suspect be remanded at the Mulolongo police station. The matter will be mentioned on the 25th of January, where the suspect will be taking plea awaiting further orders. Koki, who is said to have been living with Kandima for 2 years, was found dead inside her house in Siokimau in Machakos County. She was the founder of Koki and Associates, a human resource law consultancy firm in Nairobi. The DCI arrested Kadima on Saturday. Police reports show that he's also wanted in South Africa over criminal accusations. Detectives believe Kadima fled the house after committing the crime on Friday, and the victim's body was later found by her domestic worker. LSK Vice President Carol Kamende Daudi, representing the organization in the case, said the 14 days given by the court would allow the prosecution to reveal the suspect's identification, since he bears many names.
Hey. So, woman found dead in her home. Cohabitant is missing. He's now arrested. He's a prime suspect in the death of this woman. Good Lord. Okay.
You know, since we are on this matter of guilt, I want to fast forward it. This isn't a big headline. It's a small headline, but it features something that a former government of California has said. Now, the former governor of California is also an actor. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He's back.
He is definitely back. He was born in Austria in 1947. And he was commenting on what happened at the Capitol. And this is what he's quoted as saying. He's saying that this reminds him of his time as a child in Austria. And it reminds him of an evening, a night that was set by the Nazi Party. Now, I am going to try and pronounce this as best as I can. And I'm certain I'm going to get it wrong. But victory goes to the brave. Kristallnacht. Chris with a K, Tal with a double L, N-A-C-T. I'm pronouncing it as Nasht. If it's Nacht, then it'll be Nacht. Okay? But it translated the night of the broken glass. In 1938, the Nazis set youths free to burn, break the businesses of Jews and people they suspected to be sympathizers. And he says that there are many people in his background who, looking back at what they did, would drink their sorrows away. And he gave the example of his father, who would come home drunk every night, threatening him and his mother and his siblings, and also screaming in the middle of the night. All I'm saying is that there are certain crimes that haunt you for the rest of your life.
Sure.
There are certain things that haunt you. You may not have killed someone, but you may have done something that you know is wrong. Now, on the face of things, you may behave like it's okay, but at the back of your mind, you know it is wrong. It'll haunt you.
I hope that those that did whatever they did in 2007 in Kenya are like that.
Usually, this is the odd thing, Eric. Yeah?
I certainly
people
hope.
respond very differently. Now, if people are defensive about a crime they have committed, they're belligerent about it. It's like, what we did was right. That's the attitude, but it doesn't. In fact, if anything, people who are that way inclined will perhaps perpetrate even more crimes.
Sure.
In an effort to try and justify what
they did in the first place.
Yeah, but their mind won't let them get away. That is the unfortunate. Your conscience doesn't actually let you get away with it.
Doesn't. I mean, even when we say things like conscience is dead, there is that place where an individual is on their own and the conscience is very, very much alive. Such things don't let you go, unfortunately. You're shackled to that guilt forever.
What you're actually saying is that conscience has been sat on, but it's not gone.
It's not gone.
No, it doesn't
going nowhere.
Usually it doesn't really go anywhere.
Okay. So we have some reprieve on loans. Yay. We have been handed a 32 billion shilling loan repayment blade by the Palace Club.
Okay, once upon all right, Eric.
You might as well just, now that you're there, just go.
Red lorry, yellow lorry. Yes. Carry on, Eric, yes.
You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yes.
From January to the end of June, East Africa's biggest economy has joined Tanzania, Uganda, Burundi to take the Paris Club freeze since it was announced in May last year. Rwanda, whose debt distress is rated moderate, has not taken that offer, as well as South Sudan and Somalia that are already in distress. The rich Western countries in this Paris Club include Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Spain, and the US. And they say Kenya will use the savings to fight the COVID-19 pandemic as the country struggles with low tax revenues against spiraling public debt. According to their statement, the Paris Club people are saying that Kenya is committed to devote the resources freed by this initiative to increase spending in order to mitigate the health, economic, and social impact of COVID-19 crisis. The Treasury has not been able to raise enough revenues this year to meet the budget expenses as a result of the COVID pandemic. Now, we know that with this kind of a reprieve, which is just for between Jan and end of June, at least the end of this financial year, we will not be paying this particular one. Now, there are issues that start emerging. When the talk of taking up such offers was being floated and the National Treasury was hesitant to do this, it was also because of the kind of deals that we've entered, especially with the commercial loans that we have. So, if you appear to be in any kind of distress, do the other people that you owe money to, especially in the commercial market, have a right to come in and say, okay, I want my money? Or is this a different deal altogether? So that's a conversation that's really going to be coming up shortly in coming days, especially just to seek clarification on this, on Eurobond 1, Eurobond 2. Those, remember the deal that we signed? And they say, if you ever go to seek debt relief, it will indicate to us that you are in distress. However, the National Treasury actually released in its statement on this, they clarified and said there are some things that we are not going to do because we don't want to go bad with our credit rating. Let me just read that statement now that we're here, right? From the National Treasury. The country will not seek debt service suspension from both its multilateral and commercial creditors in order to safeguard its sovereign rating and its future access to international financial markets. This is what the Treasury is saying. So this one is just getting a reprieve on this kind of loans from this, because of this offer. Mahali tuko, we are just juggling balls. Yellow ball, red ball, blue ball, green ball. All balls are up in the air. Whichever lands first, we hope that it lands in the basket. Higher.
Okay.
What I'm waiting to see, because that is one thing. It's one thing for Treasury to come out, or it's one thing for the Ministry of Finance to come out and say what they're saying. It's another to face the realities of the consequences of the reprieve that we're receiving. And this I will wait to see. Yes.
The consequences of this reprieve.
Yep. People do not let you off the hook just for the heck of it, or just so that, okay, guys, no, you are let off the hook with certain understanding. Yes. And those details, I personally have not heard them yet, and I'm waiting.
There was some consideration that was made, right? It's good to know. So what have you promised?
Yes, because believe me.
When they said Kenya has committed to put this money into fighting COVID-19. Exactly how?
Yes, I'm waiting.
Well, the health, the social, all these other impacts of COVID-19. How much is 32B going to help us?
Exactly.
Where? Tuko pabaya, my friend, But usione paka ufikiri ni simba amenyeshewa, ufikiri ni paka.
Ni simba tu.
Nisione paka amenyeshewa nifikiri ni paka. Ni simba.
Ukione simba amenyeshewa, jua bado ni simba. Usifikiri ni paka. Still very much in control. 6:45. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Tengesa kidole, agano kidole. Thank you.
The political class, the contestants, everybody is trying to outsteal the other.
Remorse is not taught in any school. Manners is something you get from your mother. You don't get it from your political party.
Why are we so unfocused as a country? Why are we spending money and resources, yet we have real challenges in this country?
This coronavirus pandemic should teach us one thing, that universal healthcare is critical. Because at this point, whether you have a medical card that covers you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so diploma rule spells doom for P1 teachers. The fate of more than 300,000 unemployed teachers holding primary certificates, commonly known as the P1, is unknown after the government raised the bar for qualification. In May, teacher training colleges will begin diploma-level training tailored for the competency-based curriculum, the CBC. Going forward, diploma in primary teaching education, the DPTE, will be the minimum qualification to teach in primary schools. Maybe Titi can tell us a little bit about, what was it before? You finish your teaching practice, then you get right in and become a teacher. But apparently things are...
No.
Let me just go to the details of how things are being streamlined now. So what they're saying essentially is that a crisis is looming in public schools after parents... So that's another one. So the fate of more than these 300 teachers is hanging in the balance. So going forward, the ministry has said that the last batch of P1 teacher trainees are set to complete their training in March, and the teacher training colleges have already started recruiting the first cohort of diploma trainees. Where it was not a requirement, it now is. The new group of student teachers for primary schools will go through a 3-year program. This means the diploma teachers will stand a higher chance of securing employment immediately after graduating, as they will not be required to go through the CBC in-service training conducted by the Teachers Service Commission in conjunction with the KICD. This places the currently unemployed P1 teachers and those graduating in April at a disadvantage, as they will not be able to compete with the diploma-trained teachers during their interviews. Diploma qualification will automatically score higher marks than the certificate. So those who have the certificate now will not be able to transition or really unless they now go through the training all over again, 300,000 teachers essentially could be out of work come May with this now raised standard.
Learning institutions have for the longest time they've had these in-service courses for teachers where you could, essentially, during the holidays, you could go to school.
Upgrade.
It's like, yes, and you could upgrade. There was P1, there was P2, and I think P3. Now, the level of entry was actually determined by, A, what you did at your O levels, or if you had gone to A levels, well, if you went to A levels, you'd probably get a diploma or go for a degree. But if you, in the olden days, there was something called KJS, Kenya Juniors, it was called. People who had completed Kenya Junior, that was after the Standard 7 exam, were allowed to actually take, well, should we say, apply for such courses. So it was what I may refer to as a lower entry into the teaching profession. And you could be promoted, and you could also study and up your game until you go to the diploma level. Okay? This was to meet the needs of the requirement of human resource in teaching. And for the longest time, this was always the case. So that people who probably didn't have the means to, or they hadn't gotten the qualifications to get a degree, could also join in. As I read this, the thing that came to my mind is a word that is very, very common in education, and it's called competency. See, it is one thing to insist and to confer certain qualifications on people when they attain those qualifications. But you see, there is a gap that was filled by people who are trained in this way. And there's a reason why the government initiated these in-service courses over the long period of time. What isn't captured in this particular report is a time when people who simply have P1 can be given to at least begin the process of acquiring a diploma. Because you have a P1. Remember, we said with P3, being on the P3 form.
Don't worry.
P2, P1. You can actually apply for a diploma course.
But now here, the challenge here is you are not employed yet.
Yeah.
Because all that thing that you're talking about is those that have been employed and then being given an opportunity to upgrade as they continue. So here you are, you have cleared teacher training, you have not secured a job yet, you have a certificate. Somebody else, going into the future, clear teacher training with a kind of that P1 level, but they have a diploma. Now, when you're applying for a job, when TSC is announcing new vacancies, they say P1 entry, diploma. You don't have. You went through training and you only got a certificate. So now that's where the challenge is. The group of jobless people who have gone through teacher training, who are looking for the same employment but have different qualifications.
And now they can't get a job because the ministry is asking
but
that they have that certificate.
This isn't new, really, if you think about it. That if you actually read those pages that follow on your right after you've gone to the middle of where they are advertised for jobs, there is always a sentence or a statement that is made. Those who are holders of this and this and this qualifications have an added advantage. Okay? It's always been there. What I think is a little unfair is for the government to come up with this, it isn't as though they decided yesterday and they're announcing it today or the day before. They knew about it.
They did.
Yeah, so why do you offer courses when you know very well that those courses may not necessarily meet the market requirements? Yes. This is really the beef I have. Because the gap that P1 teachers fill is a huge gap. Many teachers who taught in the primary school, remember, it wasn't until recently when you had a Bachelor of Education degree were you given the option of actually training as a primary school teacher as opposed to a secondary school teacher. And it was assumed that secondary school teachers were either diploma holders or degree holders. So, without stating it, but people who had these certificates were primary school teachers. You didn't have many diploma holders as primary school teachers or degree holders as primary school teachers. These are government policies. So if you're changing, and it is a good thing to have those who are in the cadre of teachers to be highly and perhaps more qualified, it is a good thing. But there's a step which was missed here. My view, of course, I don't know the constraints that the government goes or the ministry goes through, but would have been to try and announce early that at a certain point in time in the future, we are going to be changing to this, so people need to upgrade and do this. I assume that is the way you to go about it, so that people can say, we were told.
Or maybe what they're going to do is in coming days, as they continue with the recruitment, they'll be considering those that have certificate and those that have diploma as same. If you had a certificate before 2021 and you have a diploma after 2021, then you're treated the same.
It could be
in the application, during the recruitment process.
It could be, but as things stand now,
it's not clear.
It's not clear if that's the way they're going to go. But what is clear is that if you just have that certificate, you will not be able to be hired this year. You will not be able to.
That hasn't also been announced. It's now, this is just being inferred by the writer of the story, because it hasn't. TSC has not said that we are no longer going to recruit people who do not have a diploma.
The writer actually hasn't given.
It just says what is saying is that those with diploma qualifications will automatically score higher. That one is for sure. Well,
that's the assumption here, that the selection will actually give them a higher mark,
because that's the requirement now by the ministry, that you have diploma.
By the way, it has always been the case. Do not think that this is something new. No, not really. The only thing that may further determine how you get employed. Remember, even when you are paid, if you your entry point is a diploma, your pay is different. If your entry point is a P1, it's different.
Yep.
If your entry point is a degree, different. Postgraduate, different. They are all different. So it's not as though these are demarcations that are being brought to the surface now. They've been there all along.
All along.
Yes. What is new is now this announcement.
That going forward,
yes,
we'll no longer be offering this particular course.
Yes.
We'll now be offering this particular course.
Yes. Or we're going to insist that if this is what you're going to do, we'll offer this particular course. Remember, there was a time when even if you simply had a bachelor's degree, but you didn't have a diploma in education or you didn't have a degree in education, you could teach. There was a time the government insisted that you really must have a diploma in education if you're going to teach.
Yeah.
Because then you're teaching as an untrained teacher. Essentially, that's what you are. You are untrained. So many people would get a first degree and then go and do a diploma in education so that you can qualify.
So you can qualify now as a teacher.
Yes. These aren't things that are new. It is the process that has been followed. No, let me put it correctly. The process that has been reported in the paper is what I find a bit inconclusive and unclear, because that report raises more questions than it provides answers. Yes.
Okay. So other stories in the papers this morning involve the issue of the ferry. Okay. Ferry tragedies exposing weak links in safety of the vessels. This is looking at what happened last year, the number of tragedies or mishaps that rocked the ferry channel last year. Only a few were reported since, as the occurrences are deemed to be normal. I mean, amengo kwenye maji, sawa bana, usijali ataokolewa. But the majority of the cases were reported in 2019, including the ones in May where a truck was partly submerged after it failed to go up the steep ramp. In July 2019, another lorry from Taita Millers plunged into the ocean and the driver escaped death narrowly. Perhaps the incident that captured the attention of the nation was October 2019, where Miss Mariam Kigenda and her daughter Amanda Mudeo they died after their car slid off the ferry. The other fatal case came 2 months later when John Mutinda took his car down the ramp in what police concluded was suicide. Then we also saw now what was happening over the weekend when this bus plunged into the ferry. Now, so we have the deployment of the ferry services was now placed under KPA. Now we also have the people who are now also running this channel. This is the what are they called? These military guys. Coast Guard, right? So we have now the Kenya Coast Guard as well, which is ready to be deployed as soon as possible. But we are still seeing these kind of mishaps. Vehicle getting onto the ferry, vehicle slips, vehicle gets into the water. We still have issues with safety around the ferry and the crossing of the Nyeri. So there's something that still needs to be addressed here. We had so much attention given to the ferry services at that time when Miss Miriam and her daughter died. And then after that, it was just sort of, forgotten. And things now became normal again.
What about the time when midstream, the ferry decided to do a dance? And it wasn't the first time. This has happened many, many times.
Yes.
So it brings to bear the question of servicing of these ferries, the number of people these ferries are actually licensed to carry, but the numbers that they actually do. But I think in response to this, we see that particular bridge that has been built from Liwatoni, I think which goes to Mtongwe. That was because it's a footbridge. It's intended for, but remember, not everybody lives in Mtongwe. Okay, Mtongwe is not really around the corner from Likoni, not really. It is a good response. It should have been there a long time ago. But the truth of the matter is that if you look at the management of the ferry services, let me say there are many things about it that are wanting. Yes. The response to things, the way they handle things, the whole management. You sometimes wonder, are they aware of the lives that are placed in their hands on a daily basis? But then to be fair to them, most times the ferry runs okay. There are no problems. But every once in a while there's a problem. It's the response to the problem now that makes one ask, excuse me, surely.
And the nature of the problems.
Yes.
You know, there's those problems where you can see this one clearly. It surpasses understanding.
It does.
But these simple ones, a bus is getting onto a ramp, it's unable to get onto the ramp, it gets into the water.
And it wasn't probably the first time to get onto the ramp.
Yes. Of course it wasn't.
No.
These drivers ply this route all the time.
Yes.
And in fact, they were saying there's usually something they pour onto the ramp when it's slippery so that vehicles are able to get on. And this time they hadn't. And that's why now this bus skidded off into the ocean.
Yeah,
You ask yourself,
it isn't as though the guy drove into the ocean.
Yeah. Anyway, keep it right here for more conversation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room. In the next hour, we look at the politics. We also look at the succession in the judiciary and other stories. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, guys, so
Traffic.
yesterday was that Monday. Today is that Tuesday. There's traffic everywhere you look, really. It looks like a hangover from Monday. And Mombasa Road is already building up, and it's crazy. All the way from the Weybridge at Milolongo, moving very, very slowly out towards General Motors. And that slows down considerably some right around the turnoff to South Sea. We're already looking at traffic situations at Muthaiga on Thika Road, coming out past Safari Park and then towards the tunnel at Pangani and then out there again. It's a mishmash of vehicles. Let's look at what's happening coming out of Westlands. That's already crazy. Kamishikana Kabisa all the way into the CBD. There, it's not moving at all. Now, if you're coming to the CBD from Westlands, you can use the Red Hill bypass. That should be able to get you out without too many problems. But if you're on Uhuru Highway, you're going to have to stick it out, guys, and wait for that to open up some. But it has built up quite some. Let's take a look at Landys Road now. As you go into the CBD, it's slow, but it's moving, and it's connected from Jogo Road. So let's see how that opens up as we go along. Coming off Langata Road, you'll get to the Bagavi Way roundabout, and it's going to slow down some as well as you then head towards Valley Road and Gong Road consecutively. All right, let's keep it moving, guys, as much as we can, but be careful because some of the roads are slippery. Spice FMKE, that's how you can reach us on Twitter. Text 401.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the
2.5 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room. We thank you very much for joining us. We're also live on KTN Home for the next 2 hours between now and 9 o'clock. But this show is live on radio every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Spice FM. 94.4 in Nairobi. Mombasa, it's 87.9. 102.5 in Kisumu. In Nakuru, it's 96.0. Eldoret, 96.7. Nyeri, 90.9 and 97.7 in Malindi. We also live stream the show to everybody everywhere in the world. Spice FM KE on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke. Our tradition on the show is every morning at the beginning of the hour, we hear the day's proverb from C.T. Muga.
When the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby.
When a mouse laughs at the cat, there's a hole nearby. Exit strategy.
It knows what the exit strategy is, and so it can play tough. And ask the cat, what do you think?
Yeah. Nini.
Who do you think you
Kuja.
What?
Kuja. So you come.
You think because of my size you can intimidate me?
Come.
Try and see.
And then it comes.
Yes, and the likelihood is that in pursuing its prey, it might actually have an encounter with a solid wall.
Yeah. Okay, so yesterday we saw a rather historic moment happening at the steps of the Supreme Court of Kenya. This is in the center of Nairobi. David Kenani Maraga is now citizen David Kenani Maraga, no longer the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, no longer a judge or no longer serving in the Judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. He's retired. Former Chief Justice. It was his birthday, so it was his final day in office because he has attained that mandatory retirement age and exiting the judiciary. So there was a very colorful ceremony at the steps there where he was even derobed, and then his vehicle, they removed the CJ1 number plate and they told him, now, mzee, enda tu nyumbani na hii gari, tukuitie Uber. But they gave him a vehicle. And they were kind and generous enough to do that. It was a moment where, a lot happened, and it also symbolized something new. That now we get into proper, in earnest search for the third Chief Justice under the 2010 Constitution. First Chief Justice also got there. He decided he's going to exit before his actual age, retirement age, left. There was a search. There was Chief Justice David Maraga was appointed. Now all eyes are on the Judicial Service Commission as the search for a new Chief Justice comes in. In acting capacity, the Deputy Chief Justice, Philomena Mbetemwilu, will take over and has already taken over, actually. She's now the acting Chief Justice of the Republic, despite a case that has been lodged by who else? Okiya Omtata, who's gone to court to say, nowhere in law does it say that there shall be an acting Chief Justice. But those are other details I'll be looking at in this conversation. So, Ms. Mwilu is the acting Chief Justice. And the Standard this morning says there are high stakes in the hunt for the next CJ. The David Maraga's successor will bear the burden of history because she or he will have to mend strained ties with the executive, restart stalled judicial reforms, and preside over a political transition. And the Standard goes ahead to now look at its own crystal ball in the editorial board, and they're saying some of the potential candidates include the Deputy Chief Justice, Philomena Mwilu, the Supreme Court judges, Joaquin Ndongo, Smokin Wanjala, Isaac Lenaola, and also we have Court of Appeal President Ouko and former Attorney General Githu Muigai, and somebody who's not currently in the judiciary or wasn't serving in the judiciary, lawyer Abdulkadir Mohammed, who was the President's advisor on constitutional matters, but who was also the chairman of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Constitution Review when the Constitution of Kenya 2010 was being birthed, and he also chaired the committee that oversaw the implementation of the Constitution until 2013. So there you go. Your views on this?
Well, what are we looking at here? There are many issues that come into place, especially when it looks towards his successor and who will come in. Again, looking at what the Standard would have has reported today, there's so many things that stood on the back of Maraga's exit, strained political ties, strained relationship with the executive, whereby it's said that meetings were sought after time and time again between himself and the president to try and sort things out. There was the issue of the hiring of judges to increase the capacity with which the bench would be able to preside over cases in the country. These things kind of were left hanging in the balance. So it would then appear to many people then that anybody who came in would either, one, want to continue the manner in which the previous CJ now had been dealing, or would want to then mend those ties with the executive and make sure that the way in which the bench expended its duties in the country would be seen to be flowing smoothly. Now, we know that this election will take place. Yes, it has to be competitive. But there's also the notion that the individual who will be selected will either, one, carry on the legacy of Maraga, or would want to make sure that they're in good stead with the executive.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that come into contention now, whether you like it or not. It's never with these
it's
things.
highly dependent on who's the head of the executive.
For sure, these things are never cut and dry like that. It's clear.
There's an interesting procedure with civil servants or people who work for the government as employees. The board goes through the processes of determining who qualifies, and then the best three taken to the chief executive of the country to determine. Now, is this the case with the Chief Justice?
In the case of the Chief Justice, what we've seen before, it's one name taken. The Judicial Service Commission basically forwards the name of the person that they have interviewed and they believe qualifies to be the next Chief Justice of the Republic, and the President does the job of formal appointment.
Assenting to this decision that essentially has been made by the
and this is the
Commission.
kind of tiff that they're having with the 42, now 41 judges who are going into the High Court and Court of Appeal, is because of the same thing. Does the President have a say on who becomes a judge?
Should the President have a say on a body that is said to be independent?
Clearly he does have a say. Because those judges
Clearly he has a say, because till now they've not been appointed, right? Or not been hired yet. But if you're looking at an independent body, as is what the judiciary is meant or is said to be, should it be that he must then give his assent to this decision that has essentially been made by this commission?
This particular leaf is borrowed, let's say it was borrowed from the US. That president, whoever is the president, the CEO of that particular country, also has to do the same thing. They actually decide who they want to appoint, in all honesty. So there are jobs that the CEO has. Now, unless again...
in the case of the US, the president makes that decision and then now that gets approval from...
Yes.
In this particular case, we have an independent body called the Judicial Service Commission that's in charge of running the affairs of the judiciary. That is the one that vets, that's the one that interviews, and that is the one that picks a candidate.
So we are told.
Yes. We have seen it happen twice. That is the one that picks a candidate.
So we are told.
That is how it should happen.
Thank you.
All right. So in the particular case now where we have, the search for recruitment of a new Chief Justice, we're going to see how they play it out. We have seen it before. We saw when they picked Willie Mutunga. We saw when they picked David Maraga. The Judicial Service Commission was acting, supposedly, independently and publicly in the interviews.
Why I bring in the Americans, their vetting process has to do with their parliament. Right?
Yes.
So if you have a majority in parliament, in their parliament, the nominee will go through.
Yep.
Yes. There isn't too much hoo-ha about it. Now, what I'm saying is, I'm using this analogy. If within the Judicial Service Commission, again, who appoints members of the Judicial Service Commission?
It depends. Well, there are some who are picked by the president, some who are picked by the judges, and some who are picked by lawyers. Judges and magistrates have appointees. The Court of Appeal has its own. The Law Society has its own. And then the president has two.
Okay.
If you consider the Attorney General as well. So 2 civilians and the Attorney General. Now, there was the push in the BBI for the Ombudsman, why it brought in a lot of hue and cry, was because that becomes the 4th person that the president has in the Judicial Service Commission, which basically just gives him the upper hand on what is happening in the Judicial Service Commission.
Does he really need the 4th person to have an upper hand with our system? System here, not constitution. He already has an upper hand.
In
such matters.
In the lawyer that goes in all. It's on the political side of things.
The thing is, you can't remove politics from any of these things, because even when you talk about appointments, let's ask, for instance, what is it that ensures that someone gets appointed as a judge? Let's start there. When you're employed as a magistrate, we understand. You're from college. That process is not difficult to understand. Judge, I'm sure there are minimum requirements.
Yeah.
But why this judge as opposed to the other? Why this individual as opposed to the other?
Judicial Service Commission, recruitment process, interviewing process.
They go through the interviewing and they go through the processing and
I see you're stuck in the old political way of doing things where the boss has a say on everything.
I'm actually not stuck. I'm
Yeah,
actually stuck on the reality. No. I'm actually
We have a
stuck on the
constitution
reality.
that allows us to do things differently.
Of course, the constitution allows us, and that is why the president has not signed in these 41 judges, and yet we have a constitution.
Yep.
Is that the reason why he's not signed in?
Yet we even have a court ruling. There's a point I'm trying to get across here, and I'm trying to say that political influence should not be underestimated. This is what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah.
Yes. And the political influence of a president should not be underestimated.
It cannot be underestimated. That's why we are fighting
That is really
it.
the point I'm trying to make.
That is why we are fighting it. That's why you have cases in court that say, Mr. President, you don't have any power here. You've got to go ahead and appoint these judges.
And have they been appointed?
But no. Yeah, but you see, that is a president whose job. That's why we talk about this president being rogue and not obeying court orders.
My point exactly.
So why is it that we raise issues of a president not obeying court orders?
You see, I am not disputing any of that. I, who belongs to the previous century and who's Cro-Magnonic in his thinking, is telling you this, that the reality is what I'm pointing out and saying, folks, I understand all these things. And Neanderthal as I may be.
Wow. Those adjectives with which you used to describe yourself this morning are quite enthralling.
Remember the Jurassic Park analogy? However, the leadership, the political leadership in this country is exactly as I am saying it.
So it hasn't changed.
Not
So we
really.
are reforming everything
Not
else,
really.
but
Not really.
this one is refusing to get reformed.
Not really.
We must push through
The
that reform.
influence of the presidency and the influence of those in senior positions, that the constitution exists, yes, and it is the background and the platform from which we can now push, as you're saying. But reality is that the executive has the last word.
So if I hear what you're saying, you're saying that the next Chief Justice will be picked by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
I am saying that the next Chief Justice and the choice will be largely influenced by the executive. That is precisely what I am saying.
Okay. Now, if we look at the current Chief Justice, okay, and his appointment. No, they recently retired.
Okay, thank you.
Immediately former retired
CJ.
Chief Justice.
Okay.
So the executive had an influence on the choice of David Maraga. Okay. So did he play ball?
Well, clearly not. They can have
In your
influence
view?
over how you think and how you act. But in terms of putting you there in that position, that was very clear. And it could be that this individual placed
So they
in the
had to feel
position,
comfortable.
There was the hope. There was the hope that he would play ball. That we are putting you in this position with the understanding that CT may have now given some leaning to. That, you know what, we're putting you here and the hope is that you play ball according to our rules. Now, once you're in there,
They don't
unfortunately...
really veer off completely.
Yeah.
you know?
Unfortunately, we can control your position, your positioning.
Right.
We cannot control then how you will think or act, unfortunately. Now, it would seem as though there was this friction that took place over the last number of years that, yeah, we can appoint you, but in terms of how you'll operate, that we don't have control over. But in terms of control of who will sit in that position, absolutely.
Let me perhaps be a little clearer. We are going into a transition period, all right?
Yes.
When President Kibaki came in, it was a transition period. When President Uhuru came in, it was a transition period. Now, there are many things that have been alluded to as falling smack on the doorstep of the executive. And some of them are considered ill. Now, what sort of CJ would you want? Do you really think you're just going to willy-nilly leave the Judicial Service Commission to just choose independently who choose who they want? When you know very well that come the end of that presidency, issues will come up. We have learned to be litigious. We are we like going to court. We've understood the importance of going to court. And we have a bold judicial system who make decisions that anger the government every other day. If you were in an executive position, do you really think that you are simply going to let the Judicial Service Commission just choose whoever they think that they want?
Okay. Now let's even extend that argument then. So what we are saying is that the officers in the Judicial Service Commission, they are heavily influenced as well by the executive.
My friend.
So the election of the officers that go into the Judicial Service Commission, so let's say the LSK elections into the JSC nominee, right? Or the JSC representative of the LSK representative in the JSC. The executive plays a hand in that election. Because we see an election that
it would be unwise for them not so. It would be unwise and in bad political taste not to be involved.
Recently, towards the end of last year, magistrates picked someone to sit in this. So you want to say the executive must have played a hand here?
No, not must have. It would be prudent for them to.
Look, I don't... The influence that we're talking about
the representative of the Court of Appeal, there's also some bit of a hand.
Yes.
I think there's an unspoken and sometimes almost latent influence that we can't ignore. That you know that even the way in which people are going to carry themselves out or even carry out their duties is with that background that's somehow playing in the background that you can't really see all the time, knowing full well that you must color within the lines of the expectations of this executive. Always bearing that in mind. I don't think you can run away from that, knowing full well what we see. I don't think anybody would say, yeah, well, I'm going to be here willy-nilly doing whatever I want without the realization that that influence is kind of, looking over your shoulder continuously.
You get that job with an understanding.
In what form, shape does that influence come?
It's not as though the president calls you to tell you, folk, Nani, I want
so
to
and so.
Please jump this side. No.
It's just knowing
there are
it's
things
there.
which are not spoken of in public, but there are intentions and purposes that have to be achieved. And there are people who will carry out instructions to ensure that those things... Look.
Even though we don't say, we both kind of know that it's there. That kind of thing.
If elections of student body leaders can be influenced by politicians, students.
Sambuse LSK.
What I'm trying to say is, it would be foolhardy if you're in a position of leadership and the independent arms or bodies within your country, independent. You see, that you influence doesn't mean the body is not independent. It just means that you want to have a say. It would be foolhardy not to Eric, this influence, to put your finger... Goodness gracious me. I put my foot in it, didn't I?
You did, nicely.
Put your finger. So the executive will definitely try and play a hand.
They
so
do.
Executive now will.
They do, Eric. It's a present continuous. It's not.
They must.
They will. They are.
They must.
No, you guys
Eric,
are sitting back here and saying, okay,
look,
so
Eric,
the Chief Justice will be picked by the President.
Eric,
or the Chief Justice will be picked
by... The decision will be heavily influenced
today,
by the executive.
Today, Eric, you get appointed to a senior position which allows you to appoint people. Yes, you look for qualifications, yes, but wouldn't you look for people who you can rely on and people you know?
People in your corner, my friend.
Yes, there may be people you may employ whom you know, who may be employed, but people who are close to you and people who you need to help you run things. Won't you bring people who you know?
You need a man in your corner. Or women,
Look,
you need men and women in your corner.
This isn't something nefarious. I am simply stating...
What is?
Yes, and if I may use a Kenyan phrase, I'm speaking an obviosity.
Hey, that's not a Kenyan one, that's a CT one.
It's Kenyan, the part of Kenya which I come from.
Which part?
It's an obviosity. It's obvious. It happens. People don't go around choosing strangers to positions or people whom they don't have, whose appointment they don't have a say in, to positions of high decision making like that of the CJ.
Let's look at the example of these 41, 42 judges that have not been appointed to date. What is the reason behind their non-appointment? The president has not given his assent. The list came before him and he refused them.
Actually,
the reasons as
he
to
didn't have
why-
a problem with some, but he said
he
these
had a
ones
problem with
I
others.
have a problem
So
with
because
these.
there's a few bad eggs, quote unquote, in the basket, the entire basket for now, we are not even going to deal with that. Him alone. And then we want to say that there's really no influence. It
This
really
is not
doesn't
influence.
matter.
This is not influence, by the way. This is just bad behavior. Influence is ensuring the 42 that are brought to you are already cleared by you. That is influence. Influence is looking at that entire process and saying, so who's applied? All right. Influence is looking and having a hand and saying, those that have applied, who have you shortlisted? Okay. Influence is going further to say, now those 42, make sure that are. Now that is influence. Being brought for names and saying, by the way, I don't like this. That is bad behavior.
Eric, it's actually bad behavior.
Bad behavior on part of the executive.
Yes.
Yes, but
okay.
let's call
That
it
is
bad
not influence.
behavior for purpose of discussion, but it's also influences decision making. Because by their not being appointed, it's not as though nothing happens.
That is
something does happen.
That is not influence. That is forcing your way into a decision. Influencing is something else.
Well, forcing is influencing, Eric.
This is forcing now. This is just coming out openly.
This is brute force.
At the very end of a game, and you're like, no. At who has said you two, you won? No, Ndu has not scored a single goal.
You're giving
everybody was
the
in that
analogy
stadium.
of somebody
everybody saw Ndu scoring, and they're saying no.
So someone who's losing, for instance, a board
influence
game,
at the referee
and
so
then
that
just
they don't
kicks it
award.
so that all the pieces that were on the board are scattered all over the place and says, I'm not playing this game.
Yes.
It's still influence.
He has a hand in it. He has a voice that is clearly listened to, whether you like it or not.
Remember the
it's clearly
statement,
listened to.
the statement about him having information about some of those individuals and how it is that the information he had led to that decision. What does that tell you? Of course he has information. And of course he knows about these people.
And he didn't just go randomly looking for it either. No.
It came to him through proper channels.
Yes, they did.
And if he had influence, he'd have made sure that those people do not even get shortlisted.
Put it this way. if the Judicial Service Commission, say
power.
for instance, Eric, wants to exert power and show that they're really independent, and yet, here I'm hypothesizing completely, and yet they had been told, look, folks, the path we would like you to follow is this one. Gets to me, I'll tell you, I thought we had agreed that this is the path we're going to follow. This is the path you want to follow.
Okay, let's
All
go
right,
your
fine.
way.
Take the list.
Let's follow.
No, we're not doing any at all.
25 minutes after 7. Let's take a break. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We'll be back shortly.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, so we're looking at mostly
weather
cloudy
with
conditions
Spice
in Nairobi this morning and rain in most parts of the city. Currently at 23. We'll see a high of just 23 today and lows of 14. Let's look at other cities in the country today. In Nyeri, we're looking at cloudy conditions through most parts of the day. 13 at the moment, mostly cloudy conditions. Looking at Nakuru, Nakuru is cloudy as well. We'll see 15 degrees, partly sunny conditions coming out later. In Kisumu, partly sunny conditions, 21 degrees. We'll see highs then of 28. Looking at Kakamega today, sunny conditions, 18 degrees. We'll see highs of 26. Coming out then into Mombasa. Mombasa is partly cloudy at 25, going to highs of 30. And Malindi also looking at highs of 32. Rainy conditions in some parts this morning and opening up to sunny skies later. In Kampala, partly cloudy conditions, rain expected through some parts of the city today. highs of 28. Dar es Salaam is rainy this morning in some parts as well, looking at cloudy conditions for most parts of the morning with highs of 30. Looking at Johannesburg, the rain is coming down currently at 17 degrees, going to highs then of 26. Looking at Lagos, also clear skies at the moment and a chance of rain later. And finally for now, in Kinshasa, cloudy and overcast at 23, going to highs of 30 and lows of 16.
Everything nice. All right. Okay.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so we saw huge traffic on Thika Road this morning, moving in some parts as you get to the underpass at Pangani. That opens up a little bit, but then if you can use Wangari Maathai Road into the CBD, there you should be fine. Coming out of Westlands, bumper to bumper, all the way from the turnoff from James Gishuru, coming down then from Kangemi out into Westlands. That is not moving as fast as you'd like it to, very, very slowly. All right, the service lanes are at a standstill and accumulating on Thika Road. Stick to the highway this morning if you can. Today, the service lanes, unfortunately, are not your friends. The bypasses also will work for you today. Eastern and Southern looking pretty good. Take you longer, but you will not have to be stuck in traffic. Okay, so we're looking at Mombasa Road tight, as is Thika Road tighter. Getting to Landis Road into the CBD, that's going to take you a pretty minute to sit through, but you should be okay coming into the CBD from there. Let's take a look in half hour and see how that has changed. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 29 minutes after 7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home, online, www.spicefm.co.ke, and Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. This and every weekday morning, you have in the room Eric Latif, C.T. Muga, and Nduoko. This morning, we are looking at the just retired Chief Justice David Maraga and the quest by the Judicial Service Commission now to have a new Chief Justice. What are your expectations of the new Chief Justice? And that's a question we'd like to ask you this morning. Call us in 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Or post your comment on Spice FM KE on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. So if you look at the editorials in the papers this morning, The Nation says, Tower of Justice, history will judge Maraga kindly. And it says he retired yesterday from the judiciary after attaining this mandatory 70 in conformity with the Constitution. He was the second Chief Justice since the promulgation of the new Constitution. They say he leaves behind a fairly robust judiciary, an institution that has undergone fundamental transformation in the past decade and, among others, achieved some level of independence, which is the challenge for the incoming CJ. He or she must consolidate the gains made and continue on the trajectory of renewal and growth. And then they go ahead to say that the outgone Chief Justice has gone down in history for unprecedented rulings that changed the course of history. Of course, we start with that in 2017, the annulment of the presidential election. His fidelity to the rule of law, boldness in articulating issues affecting the judiciary, sober and restrained demeanor, and firmness stood him out as a pillar in the administration of justice. He confronted the president and the executive and the legislature whenever he felt the judiciary was being undermined. The Standard says, Adieu Maraga, you have left the judiciary in a better place. And the editorial here also says, Maraga will be remembered for many things. Perhaps he'll be remembered most for the Supreme Court decision in 2017. Also, some have suggested that the judiciary's tribulations, mostly in the form of budgetary cuts, have some roots in that revisit statement that was made by the president then. But what was the only run-in that Maraga had with the executive? He criticized the president over the appointment of the 41 judges and called for the dissolution of parliament over the elusive two-thirds gender rule. That aside, he reduced the case backlog from over 300,000 in 2016 to 35,000 by June 2020. From a case clearance rate of 42% in 2016, the rate has increased to 87% under his watch. Maraga also made the digitization of court records a reality by moving the courts to the digital platform. So Maraga is being praised here. He did quite a bit in the judiciary. Now we are looking at the next Chief Justice. So let's review Maraga's performance and see what expectations do you have of the next Chief Justice. So, okay, let's say that the executive has a political hand in picking. So what is it that even the executive should be looking out for? Aside from their own personal interest here, the interest of the country, what is it that we should expect to have in the next Chief Justice?
The perspectives, of course, will differ.
There are those,
yes. There are perspectives that I would like to hear from people who are actually part and parcel of the legal system in this country. Lawyers, magistrates and judges may not actually be able to comment. Probably their offices don't allow them to say certain things. But people within the legal fraternity, there's that perspective. Then there's the perspective of the common mwananchi like us here. What do we think and what do we expect? What is certain is that Justice Maraga set very interesting bars. And clearly, he followed, well, from a layman's perspective, the rule of the law as he saw it. Yes. Remember we talked about, I brought up this discussion of influence and the influence of choosing. There is one thing to want a position. There's another to have it. I am of the view that sometimes positions change you. You may be one person, you are inclined in a certain direction, then you are in a certain position of authority, and you take cognizance of what happens in that position, and suddenly you look at life differently. Simply because of the position that you then find yourself in. And the enormity of that particular position also dawns on you, and dawns, should we say, rather brightly, and you realize there are certain things I can or I cannot do. But more importantly, if you're talking about legacy, one wishes that people who are in positions of authority would consider this more often, because you will leave that office at some point. And when you do, how exactly will we judge you? Because we will judge you. How exactly will we see your tenure? Look, we had the Auditor General retiring in the not too distant past. I'm saying this because I like these processes. Meaning, we are following the rule of law. Someone has a 2-term or a 1-term or X number of years in that particular tenure. And when it comes to an end, they leave.
When this individual is being looked at, and when there's hope now for the new individual who would come in, I don't think that people will judge then on how you were able to play to the tunes of the fiddle of the executive. I see that clearly being judged by what you were actually able to do for that institution, and not how well you were able to kiss up,
dance,
essentially, or dance to the tune of the person who was pulling the strings. Because again, yes, the influence could be there in terms of how you got into that position. However, thinking independently, working for the betterment of this institution, which eventually has a play on how Kenyans then would operate, I think that is what you would be judged by. And how, look at we talked about over 300,000 cases, reduced to 35,000 in a matter of years, in a matter of 4 years, where people would be saying for the longest time historically was that the judiciary was only able to see a number of cases per year. It was riddled with corruption. There was the ability to manipulate by use of money and all kinds of things. That seems to have been cleaned up quite some. Again, you can control or you can wield some elements of control in how that person is brought in, but in terms of how they're able to do their job, really, that then depends on the individual. And that is what will be used to judge a Chief Justice. You're not going to remember that during his appointment, it had everything to do with who the executive's choice was. But what they actually did over time, the landmark rulings, making sure that you had more judges appointed, more magistrates appointed throughout the country, more courts being set up, the push for more independence, the push for more funding to be able to get certain things done in the judiciary. That is what you'd be remembered for.
Actually, if you are saying that, then we should remember his predecessor. Because Dr. Willie Mutunga, actually, these changes we talk about that was spearheaded Remember, he was the first Chief Justice of the new constitution.
Yep.
But then he had a president who did not flinch when it came to allocating money for those changes. So one could argue that Dr. William Tunga had a field day. He was able to actually put into practice the things he wanted, something which Justice Maraga did not have. Unless we're going to say that he was just simply making noise for the sake of making noise.
So then are we saying then that once you look at the work that a chief judge in Kenya, when you look at somebody like that in that position, then the person over him or her at that point will greatly have an impact on the work that they've been able to do.
Yes.
That the influence in one way or another could impact directly on their performance. If you have the support or if you don't, then it has a direct impact on how you are able to perform as a Chief Justice in this position.
Take, for instance, the appointment of 41 judges. We always talk about case backlogs. We always talk about the performance of the judiciary. And when the judiciary speaks, they tell you, look, folks, we'd like to do this, but we do not have enough personnel. If we had enough personnel, some of these things would greatly change. If we had this would greatly change. Now, those things are not controlled by the judiciary. They are controlled by the government. They are controlled by Treasury. They are controlled by the executive. So, if there is that imbalance, then clearly the things, and remember, all these things end up and lead to that judiciary providing justice for the people of Kenya.
Yep.
So, even that process is hampered just by that particular process. So, when they say, look, why did I bring in the issue of lawyers and the legal fraternity having their view? For the longest time, I had a fairly negative view of a certain gentleman named Bernard Chunga, because I remember him mostly as a prosecutor. And the cases he prosecuted, and he seemed, even when he became Chief Justice, I figured,
extension of
Rubber
prosecutorial days.
stamp seat appointment. But I was pleasantly surprised when I was speaking to a very senior lawyer who told me that one of the best Chief Justices he has ever worked with. And this is a lawyer who actually worked for the government for the longest time before he went into private practice. And he says that man understood the law and put it into practice. Now, in talking to a person who was in court, I never met the man. I don't even know what he looks like, except for the pictures I've seen.
Well,
in
you
the
know
papers.
what he looked like.
No, I actually don't. Even you've seen a picture twice. Remember, that was then. Right now, I have no idea what he looks like.
Now you don't remember what he looks like. Okay, go on.
Eric is determined. Okay, Eric, I remember what he looks like.
Right, good.
Is that okay? Can we now move ahead?
Yes.
All right. The thing is, the perspective that I was given by someone who either has worked with him or somebody who actually practices the law was completely different. There will be those who will sing high praises of Justice Maraga. There are those who will tell you a different story.
Yeah.
It just depends on where they sit.
Yeah.
But from a national perspective, my opinion, he was a good Chief Justice, a courageous one. He is someone who clearly was not afraid to make his thoughts known. Now, as to whether he was a good administrator, I would argue is, you know why? There's something that came up, and we discussed it here at great length. The self-auditing that the judiciary does. To the point where they even explain. Remember the justice in Meru who took the first position? Because of the manner in which she has handled her cases and has cleared her cases. When you put into practice a system where you actually introspect and look at your own performances, it's something that very many arms of government do not do.
So should the new person who comes in then be looking towards making sure that the judiciary, in terms of its processes, continually be carried out? Or should they be looking towards making a name for themselves when it comes to how they were able to handle matters, whether they're being puppet stringed or not?
They will be judged either which way. Someone precedes you, you are going to be judged on the performance of that person.
I'm looking at the judiciary has evolved over the last few years. The things that you're seeing today, you didn't see 5-10 years ago, right? You've seen a reduction in cases, you've seen more courts, etc., etc., etc. As you go on, the processes have become better. For me, it should be that somebody coming in then should continue to make sure that those processes become better, become more streamlined. For me, that has a telling It has a direct impact on how you're able to do your job, as opposed to going in saying either I'm going to continue this legacy or I'm going to play to the whims of those who put me here. For me, the focus should be on making sure that this institution is able to do its job better. And whether you look at it like that or not, or whether you're looking at yourself or not, if you do the job for which you are put in there to do, it has a direct impact on your person.
What if ensuring that the institution does the job it's required to do forces you then to get to bed with the bad apples in the executive?
I think those are one of the losses.
How do you
that
strike that compromise? I mean, look, for example, this particular Chief Justice has had run-ins with the executive, with the head of the executive specifically, where he's come out to say, Mr. President, it's not personal. It's because I'm running an institution, you're running the institution, you're also the head of state, and there are things that we require. We ought to have at least had a conversation, and I've not had a conversation with you for the last 3 years or so. Okay? So here you are now, you're the next Chief Justice, and you know the kind of treatment that your predecessor basically had. So what do? Do you tone down? Do you say, all right, so the executive is uncomfortable with some things that we do. We need to make sure that, we strike this balance so we can get the money, so we can create more courts, so we can get a speedy appointment of judges that the JSC comes up with, so we can get things moving. Let's give them some leeway, a little bit of leeway. Let's compromise a bit of our independence. I mean, what is independence if we are not able to run with that independence? Is that what you'd want to see in a Chief Justice?
No, because I think, look, if friction has to come about in order to get something done, then I think that's something that you're going to have to go through. It's a challenge that you're going to have to face. The influence notwithstanding, because even if that thing that you were seeking to be done isn't done, it will be clear to everybody that you tried. Because what do you remember now from what you've just said? We tried to have a conversation. It never happened. So it goes down in record that we tried to sit and have a conversation so that certain things could be done because we saw how important it was for this institution. It never happened for whatever reason. It never happened. Maybe I didn't want to face, as an executive, I didn't want to face the reality that these things were necessary. I was a little bit sore with you because there's certain things that I hoped you would rule in a certain way and it never happened, right? But it goes down on record that I made the effort in the attempt to make sure that the processes within the institution of which you have given me power will actually be done. Everybody knows that I tried to have a conversation with you. We also know that in as much as this institution is independent, he who holds the purse holds the power, right? So there's certain things I still will not be able to do. Again, it goes down on record. So whether it was done or not, you know that I tried. It's going to bring friction, but that's what I'm saying. If you focus on the job and you know what needs to be done, definitely it will bring friction, but you're still doing your job. You are still expending your duty. And I think that's the problem. Along the line, sometimes in other institutions, as you've spoken about in other sectors, that you're trying to do your job and you realize that frustrations come from outside. And rather than sticking to your guns or sticking to the process for which you are called to, the influence shakes you a little bit. And then along the line, you lose your focus. That's what happens. Well, and then you have the saying later that, he didn't really get it done. But what has happened? You get frustrated and you let the frustration overwhelm you.
What are the rules of the game?
Stick to your job.
Because, you see, is it that you're sticking to your job or is it your style of leadership that brings a conflict into play? Sometimes an issue may arise not because it's an issue, but because of personalities. Someone else handling the same issue and not necessarily compromising may even have handled it differently. I'm simply introducing an academic discussion on this particular matter. Yes, not that I have concrete facts about someone's style that may have worked against them or not. It's just that there are people who will approach the same matter differently. We had William Mutunga. We discussed this with Dr. William Mutunga. And he himself also mentioned the compromises that sometimes when you're in that office, you actually have to make. If you want to get things done. It is not new to high office. Even the chief executive of the country makes those compromises.
You have to make some compromises.
Everybody
here and
makes
there.
compromises.
Now, the thing is, how do you balance that those compromises are not undermining your own independence or your own decision-making or your own office? Because there are compromises that you make, that those are not compromises. You basically just surrendered.
and then throwing everybody else that is essentially under you under the bus, right? And guess what? In as much as you're operating under that influence, you still have to report to this institution where everybody else is looking up to you to get things done. Do you think that they want to know that you're operating under influence? They don't want to know that. They want to get their job done. Or you would think that they do. But you still have to go and face them every day. So which would you rather do? Which would you rather do? Focus on your job and let it go down on record that you let people know, look, this is what we are trying to do. And it has not happened for 1, 2, 3 things.
This isn't a tick and dog story. When you ascend to high office, it comes with responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And the very things we're discussing, that's what comes in the high office. If you are a magistrate, you don't have to deal with these things. If you're even a judge of the High Court, you don't have to deal with these things.
Yep.
When you're the Chief Justice, you have to deal with these things. When you're the CEO of the country, you have to deal with these things. I remember a very senior officer in the police force once told me something that I found particularly interesting. He told me, these jobs, the problem is you don't sleep. He put it very simply.
Yeah.
Said, you don't sleep. I said, really? He said, no.
You can't sleep as a...
You are on call 24 hours. You may not think so, but you are. You hardly sleep.
You will be answerable at least.
You are. Something happens, you will get called.
It happens in Baragoi. You must be the one to report to the boss.
They want to know.
Not the other way around. The boss is looking up to tell
what's
you,
happening?
What's happening in Baragoi? No, it has to be the other way around. Okay? So, I mean, it's true. Now, I'm just thinking of the number of things that we're talking about. So, we are going to have a new Chief Justice, and the expectations of the Chief Justice are very, very high. Are we also at a point where now we should, reverse these roles and say, since 2010, every time we have a new position being taken up, position of CEO and deputy CEO, CEO goes to male, deputy goes to female. We have had a Chief Justice, 2 male Chief Justices, 3 female Deputy Chief Justices. Should we now reverse this? And why not, for the first time at least, have, even looking at the names that are being proposed here in the Standard this morning, none of them is female. Well, there is Justice Njoki Ndongo.
And
but
Martha
then,
Koome, yeah.
And Martha Koome, yes, from the Court of Appeal. Can we now just say, let's have a female Chief Justice?
Do we want the position to be gender sensitive, or do we want somebody who's most qualified?
Most qualified.
And
there are very many women who are highly qualified.
Part of the qualification?
Yes. There are very many women who are highly qualified.
Oh,
the same way where we say that if the Chief Justice is a man, then the deputy must be a woman. All right? So you'll have very highly qualified people who sit in the position of Deputy Chief Justice. Those are as qualified to be Chief Justices. Therefore, we have qualified women who can be Chief Justice in the country. So why not just go straight ahead and say, let's go?
Yes, and they don't necessarily have to have been sitting on the bench to qualify for that position, as we have seen.
As we've seen. Yeah. What we have in the Court of Appeal, in the Supreme Court, we have judges who had not sat on the bench before.
No.
We had a Chief Justice
who had
not sat on the bench, but he came in and he led the institution. And he left a legacy in the institution.
He did.
We're just having that conversation as well. Now we have acting Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, who has been the Deputy Chief Justice for a number of years. Okay. Okia Mtata has gone to court to say, according to the law, my casual reading of the law, we don't have anything that says acting. So what is this acting story that you guys are talking about?
But the question
that matter is going to be determined, yes.
It would be, but then again, you see, we've said this of governors of the country, and we said this a great deal more about the issue of Nairobi and the governor and those who want to take. At what point does the law allow you to hold office, or does it not matter if you have issues in court? Because the now acting Chief Justice has issues in court. And as we speak, they're unresolved. So am I to understand it? So long as they're unresolved, you're innocent. And so because of that, you can continue with your business as usual.
I think Mumingogi is going to have to tell us a bit about this one,
because
this sits right with her.
There's been an issue on whether Philomena Mwilu then can continue serving as in the judiciary, in the Supreme Court, and I think that has been cleared that she can continue serving as she goes ahead to challenge her prosecution, and as the prosecution puts its case forth. So that one is a matter. That's how come she's still there.
I
as
understand
Chief
the
Justice.
ruling, but you see...
Does it make sense? Like that's
No, yeah, well, there's the issue of sense, and then there's the perception of it. We are now going to have an acting Chief Justice with the cloud hanging over her head.
Yep. And she may apply to be the next Chief Justice.
Yes.
And she may be shortlisted
She
to,
may,
be,
all that
to go
you
for
see,
interviews.
Not that she shouldn't, or not that she shouldn't even apply. I am simply talking about the perception and the cloud. A Chief Justice with a cloud of cases hanging over their head. In my view, when you have a cloud hanging over your head, the other perception that comes in is that you're amenable to influence. Because there's a chink in your armor.
You can be compromised.
There's a chink in your armor. If it is resolved and it is clear that there is no issue, that's a totally different story. But as it is now, that chink exists. If we say that,
let's say,
governors who have been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, or at least their hand has been seen approaching the cookie jar, because if the matter is in court, we're not quite sure. There was a hand in the cookie jar, but we're not quite sure whether it was their hand or somebody else's hand, or a hand that they sent. We are categorically clear that these are people who, under Chapter 6, cannot possibly hold that particular office. It is from that background that I'm saying what I'm saying. Because Justice Mwilu may very well be qualified for that job. And to have ascended to the position of even deputy, she was qualified. There's no question about it. However, perception.
The perception widely is that she may have done something untoward that would not then allow her to sit in this position where she was expending justice over certain things, where you yourself have a cloud over your character.
I'm aware I'm being puritanical here, but I'm saying when someone ascends to that very high office of Chief Justice, it shouldn't even be mentioned or whispered that there's something untoward.
It shouldn't even come to play.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then the position is secure. So long as there is that discussion, even when she does what she's supposed to do under the law and does it well, that cloud will always have influence over it in the realm of perception, yet again.
Nathan says it's expected that the letter will be followed, but the spirit is left to the mercy of the human and social morality in the appointment of the next Chief Justice, okay? CT has confessed to having a Jurassic disposition. So he's going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
Let's take it further. I'm ugly Jurassic.
You are?
Julia says you're stuck in time, CT. If you understand the spirit of the Constitution, then you will embrace independent institutions. And if indeed you are in control, you'd swear in your choice of judges. You'd swear in your choice of judges. If indeed you're in control, if you're in control of things that are happening and you're doing things the correct way, then it doesn't matter who the independent institution of the judiciary picks as their head.
This is the beauty of freedom, because it allows perspectives to be aired and to be discussed. I am all for the theory of independence. I'm very much for it. The practice of it is very, very different from what we envision, what we would like to see, and what we would perfectly enjoy.
It's the reality.
Because after all, if you're independent in word and not in deed, my friend, just let's be honest, you're not independent.
You may think you
It can be written there, independent. It can be written, that's okay. But in practice, in terms of what you're able to actually do, and decisions that you're actually able to make, and processes that you can actually carry out, my friend, if it's not independent, it's not independent.
Eric, you raised a very important issue earlier on, but consider, for instance, even our county system, okay? Semi-autonomous, so we say. Demi. If you look at the influence and effect that the Ministry of Finance has over what they get, essentially, you could argue the Ministry of Finance controls what they can do at some level. Because if they don't give you money,
So
what
the Treasury runs the counties.
Yes, exactly. If they don't give you money, what on earth do you think you're going to do?
You're nobody.
Yes.
City Muga is very right, by the way. This is according to Esotiano. Says you're right in terms of, the executive influence will play a hand here in the choice of the next Chief Justice. Maybe the executive at this point will be thinking, we want to have more direct influence. The other one maybe will be more subtle on, let them be. Who is it? Do we have any problem against this person? No, we don't. So it's okay. This particular time, they'll be like, it's not about whether we have a problem with them. It is, do we like them?
Are they going to
do
be able
we
to do what
like
we want them
this
to do?
person? 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a break on KTN Home. We'll be back shortly in the next hour on KTN Home and Spice FM and online. We'll be having a conversation about the swelling lakes of the Rift Valley. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Yep, the conversation continues on Spice FM around the country and around the world, and we'll be back on KTN Home shortly. So we've been talking about Chief Justice David Maraga. The quest now to replace Maraga is official because we have an acting Chief Justice in the name of the Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu. Maraga has formally retired from the judiciary after serving so many years. Now, who is it going to be? Who's next? And what's the hand, like City is saying, of the executive going to do this time round? Maybe the first time there was too much attention from across the globe on what happens in the independence of the judiciary. So the JSC was playing a game that was very, very, much in the public domain. The executive could have thought, okay, even if we want to influence, we can't really do it so directly. So we ended up with an activist in the Chief Justice. And then the second time, the executive was like, all right, as long as you don't give it, let's get somebody from the system. Somebody who has worked in the system. So the former Court of Appeal judge rises to become Chief Justice. And they're like, okay, he's a good man. He's a Christian. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. Even in his interview, he said, I am staunch on this particular matter. I will not work on Saturdays. All right, so that's a good guy. This time, stung. And the executive will be looking at it and thinking,
and consider it's going to be the end of a certain presidency. Who do you really want in charge of the judiciary when such a change has happened? What sort of individual do you want there? Do you want somebody who, as you mentioned, has an activist mindset? Do you want somebody who has a status quo? It was assumed that Justice Maraga, the sort of person who will maintain the status quo.
Yeah, because he's been in the system for the longest.
Yes, he has, but he also has a mind, as he showed us.
Yeah.
And he also listens.
And he's going to use it.
Oh, yeah. And he also has a spirit, and he also has a certain code of conduct. And he listens to a higher calling. So all that has come out. So there's a limit to what, even as you choose this person, you can do and can tell.
All eyes now on the Judicial Service Commission as they begin the quest to fill the vacant position of Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's now 8 o'clock. Keep it right here for more conversations.
.5 Spice FM. Kisumu.
Okay, so Marurui is a mess this morning, guys. People who try to avoid Thika Road, everybody then has met there. And things are not moving in any way, shape or form. So Thika Road, those who try to avoid it have gone in the other direction and unfortunately are stuck. Muthaiga is still looking messy. Coming off Kiambu Road as well, even messier. And then trying to join the Thika Superhighway is taking some time. Today, the service lanes are not doing you justice, guys. You might want to stick to the major highway and stay on that one. As you get to the Pangani underpass, remember that the bus park construction has also started right at the Globe Cinema. So guys, this one looks a little bit crazy. Mombasa Road inbound at Syokimau is bumper to bumper. It's not moving as much as we'd like it to. So this one is going to require some patience as well. Coming out of Westlands is also a mishmash and into the CBD. Coming off Landys Road as well. Slow into the city centre, but it is moving. So today is that Tuesday, guys. It needs some patience and some care because the roads are still slippery. Talk to us where you might get stuck. Remember that the bypasses Eastern and Southern and Red Hill can be used. Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. The only way
All right,
to
it's
start
2.5
your
minutes
day.
after 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room broadcasting on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and on Twitter. We begin this hour, as we always do, with the day's proverb.
When the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby.
When the mouse
laughs at the cat,
there's a hole nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Or
There's
like I
safety
said,
nearby.
If you watch Tom and Jerry, there's a dog nearby. And the dog is a mouse's friend.
Well,
that little detail is very important.
Yes,
Those two must be friends.
And also, dogs don't eat mice.
No?
They're not known to eat mice.
Okay.
Because the dogs we refer to are domestic dogs. They don't need to, they are fed. It's cats who like to alternate their diet every once in a while with small birds, mice. Rats can be tricky because you can find the rat the size of a cat. So
Where do you live?
Rat the size of a cat.
Yes,
Where?
you can.
No jokes, man. So let's talk about a phenomenon that's been happening in the country for a number of years, but sort of came to a head last year, CT, when you started talking about the rising lakes and the effect. We highlighted the issue of the area around Lake Victoria, and then we started highlighting the issue around the Rift Valley and the lakes in the Rift Valley, Baringo, Bogoria, and all the others, and the fact that people are actually getting displaced because lake has come to home. And now home is no longer home is underwater. And crocodiles have started visiting, and to them, they're just within their habitat. They haven't noticed that it's actually the lake that is moving them further and further inland. They just think, wow.
Be careful there, Rick. You're thinking for the crocodiles.
Yeah. Things have changed. And so now crocodiles are enjoying a wider space to play.
See, the crocodile spokesman.
See, yes. You just look at them and you understand their plight.
Oh, really?
So you understand the plight of the human beings now who then have to now move further and further up, higher ground. And schools have reopened. Many schools, and we've seen very many photos and videos, clips from these areas where schools are completely and totally submerged. Okay? So there's a huge impact that has befallen the people who live around these lakes because they've been displaced by the floods. So NTV was running a story over the weekend, and it was a lovely story, The Rising Lakes. It was done by Zainab Bondati, who is a science and technology editor at the Nation Media Group. And we want her to come in on air this morning so we can discuss this matter with somebody who went to the ground, interviewed a number of people, a number of residents, a number of government officials as well, researchers as well, to try and understand. So why would a lake be rising, and what is causing this, and what is happening to the people around there? So let's bring in Zainab now. Zainab Bondati, good morning.
Good morning, Eric. Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to The Situation Room.
Thank you.
Lovely story that you did. I assume it took you a couple of weeks to run this story. Just take us through the areas that you visited and what you saw.
Well, we were following the Rift Valley. We knew of the situation in Lake Victoria, but for this particular story, we focused exclusively on the Rift Valley. So we started up north in Turkana and followed it all the way to Magadi. It took us about 10 days and 11 nights on the road actually, no, 10 nights, 11 days on the road, documenting all those plays. And a couple more months, of course, to sift through all that footage and deliver the story for the Daily Nation and deliver the story for NTV. And while we were on the ground, we saw quite disheartening things. It's another thing to see it on TV and read about it in the newspapers, and it's a completely different thing to actually be on the ground and see it firsthand. The frustration on the people's faces, that when you see the water. In fact, actually, when we went to Turkana, we got stuck in Lake Turkana at a point where the water wasn't there that morning before we arrived. We were going to a camp on the edge of the lake, just around the Lear there, and we found it looked like someone had poured water on the ground there. So we dismissed it as just very light soil, and we decided to drive through it, except it wasn't light soil. We got stuck in it and ended up staying there for 7 hours. So when we left the vehicle and walked into the camp to ask for help, and we told them we were stuck in water. They asked us, what water? We told them there's water at the gate. They said, no, there's no water at the gate. We just passed there this morning, there was no water at the gate. We told them, well, now there is. And they started to raise alarm. You guys come, the lake has found us, the lake has found us. So basically what the water did, it just surrounded them. So making the camp kind of an island. So before we arrived there, it was just a normal road with the lake on the other side of the camp, in front of the camp. But by the time we were arriving, the water had now come around and blocked them in. And so the camp had to be abandoned.
What are people facing, Zainab? Because we talk about the horror that they're going through, having lost their homes and things, but make it clear. What are people, because like you said, here in Nairobi, on higher ground and such, you may not resonate with exactly what's going on. What exactly is happening with people and their livelihoods?
For many of those people, they've been displaced more than once. The first time when the water comes, you move to higher ground, but you live in your land where you have your actual home and land that you actually own. So when you're moving to someone else's ground. So you may not necessarily have the money to rebuild. You'll have to talk nicely to this person and beg this person to allow you to share their land so that you can seek refuge. And then the water finds you there again, and you have to move a third time. So most of those people in many of those places, actually, they've moved more than once. There's some communities we found in Bogoria, they were moving the 6th time because they've been moved and moved and moved and moved and moved. And that by the time we were finding them, they were about to move then. So they are now landless. They have no home. They've lost everything in the water. Some of them are now relying on food aid, because how else will they be able to feed themselves if they have no land to work on? So that's the other situation they have to figure out. How will they eat? Where will they get their next meal? And we actually found a family in Turkana that had run out of options completely, and they were now sleeping out in the open. You know, when other people have homes to go into, this family, it was actually a woman and her toddler. Now they have to sleep outside in the open. And then during the day, they go to the lake, find some odd jobs, those trucks that come from Congo to pack fish, try find some odd jobs, whatever money they get, then they can be able to buy food. But they have no money to rebuild their homes. So when we spoke to the government, they told us that's one of the things they have to figure out. How do you compensate these people who have lost land? Because where they've moved to is not land that is theirs. So there's a possibility of land conflict coming up as they try to solve this situation. The schools that were submerged, in Baringo County, at least 24 schools were underwater. And so that means you have to move these children to other schools. And in a time of coronavirus, how do you squeeze that many children in other schools without creating another crisis in terms of their health, compromising their health? So those are some of the challenges on the ground.
Sure, but something is causing this in a way that it has never happened before, Zainab. But now looking at the science of it, what is behind this problem?
we did speak to members of the task force. The government set up a task force to look into it. And they told us that having been on the ground, they found 3 things that are causing this. One is climate change, and that was evidenced by the fact that this rising lake phenomenon actually started back in 2010. And as the rains get more intense, the lakes rise and rise. And in fact, Kenya Met says 2019 was our wettest year in history, actually, since 1961. Before 2019, we had never experienced that much rain. And then 2020 came, and we had that Indian Ocean dipole that also made our weather erratic and brought in more rain. And so the lake rose further. So lakes like Baringo is the one that has risen the most, and it's risen by about 15 meters. You can imagine 15 meters, that's a lot.
Yep.
That's a lot. And in 2020, last year actually, it rose by 4 meters. So if you look at 4 meters, basically, you know the height of a door? A normal door that you walk through?
Yep.
Double that. That's 4 meters.
So what you're saying is that it has been rising steadily?
Yes, since 2010.
So that is one cause.
Yes, that's one cause.
Climate
the
change.
Second one, yes. The second one is landscape degradation. Landscape degradation is things like deforestation, poor farming practices, even major what are they called, infrastructure projects. You know, they have to like destroy part of the land before they can actually build something.
Yeah.
So what happens is you're destroying that landscape. You're creating a lot of loose soil. So when the rain comes, it sweeps all of it into
the lake,
a water body, into the nearest water body. It's like when you have a cup of tea and you keep adding sugar and adding sugar and adding sugar and adding sugar and adding sugar, it starts to spill at some point. Yeah, so that's the second reason. The third reason, they said, when I've mentioned climate change, I've mentioned landscape degradation. The third reason, and this is only exclusive to the Rift Valley area, is the tectonic movement, the volcanic activities below the ground. Water ideally is supposed to be able to seep into the ground and go and become underground streams and stuff like that. But because of the volcanic activity happening in the Rift Valley, some of those, I could call them holes, that the water would seep through are sealing. So because they're sealing, the water has no way of seeping through. And so it remains there. And then you have this water coming from the catchment areas. It's still no way to go into the underground. So it just rises and rises and rises. So those are the 3 main reasons. But for the reason of the tectonic movement, the scientists and the geologists we spoke to told us that they still need a lot more research on that to be able to establish if indeed that is part of the reason, or if they misrepresented it as something else.
So this is a task force that was set up by the government to establish the cause of this phenomenon, and they came up with a report. Did they also come up with recommendations on what to do then to address this?
Yes. Their recommendations, they said, they're also being polished and made situation to situation, because you might make a recommendation while you're sitting in a boardroom, maybe in Nairobi, but then you go to a place like Baringo and say, no, this doesn't work the way it works for Turkana.
Yeah.
So first, the immediate thing they have to do first is to find money to relocate the school.
Okay.
In Baringo, they have the exact number of 24, but in other areas, they're still documenting to see how many learners have been affected. But to address the emergency crisis, that is relocating the schools and feeding the people who need the food, that will cost about 2 billion shillings.
Okay.
So that's the immediate need that they need to address. They said the recommendations have been done short term and long term. So in the short term, they also need to figure out how to give people medical care, since many health centers have also been submerged. And you know, when you go through those buildings, especially when you're on Lake Baringo specifically, it looks like a scene out of a horror movie, with all those trees that are ideally not aquatic, being underwater and having been starved of life, and now they look black, like a fire burnt through them, and then half of that tree is already underwater. And then you're going through these buildings and you're being told stories of what this building was a few months ago before the water came. So you'll find that for many of these buildings, the owners or maybe the people who live there tried to save something. You can't move the entire building, but you can at least save the doors and the windows and parts of the roof. So utaona ni kama imebomolewa, part of it, imetolewa milango, imetolewa madirisha, and maybe in some areas the roofs were removed. And in the areas where the roofs were not removed, we found crocodiles on those roofs, and it was very terrifying. But the people there, they were dismissing it like, these crocodiles are friendly. Tumeishi nazo miezi yote zishazoeana, zitufanyia kitu. Yet the government says
I hear you saying that they had domesticated crocodiles. Is that it?
Not really. They're trying to put on a brave face, actually, not to be afraid of the crocodiles, because whether they like it or not, their life has to move on.
Yeah,
sure.
And this life involves the water. At some point, they have to be on the water.
You know,
so they put on a brave face.
This is Lake Baringo, and this is the Rift Valley. And indeed, you have prefaced your conversation well and told us that you are looking at the Rift Valley. I want to take this conversation beyond the Rift Valley, because sea levels are rising all over the world.
Yes.
Right now, there are at least 11 cities in the world that some are already sinking. Some are destined to sink completely by the year 2050. Some have over 50% of the city are living below sea level. Now, we have a coastline. Did your studies take you as far as considering that because you have a coastline and because sea levels and ocean levels are rising, that those cities, those towns, those people who live near the shores of the ocean or the lakes might also be affected?
Yes, but no, it was not included in the story because that will start a whole different conversation. Kenya Met actually has this data, and last year they released the very first ever state of climate report. We are members of the World Meteorological Organization, and the World Meteorological Organization does every year state of the climate globally. And in order to make the global report, each country has to submit their report. So the very first time, Kenya Met decided to publish a Kenya edition. I think you can find it on their website or somewhere online. And it documents the history of climate change in Kenya from as far back as I think I saw some data going back as 1901, documenting how temperatures have changed, documenting how also climate change is affecting things like malaria, and of course the coastline. You see, unfortunately, we live in a world where many people don't believe that climate change is happening. So until they start to see actual impacts, like the rising lakes and the frequent cycles of drought, then they start to see, something is actually happening. In fact, in the last 15 years alone, we've had 43 cycles of drought. The last 15 years only. And these are not just drought, floods, kidogo. They are serious floods where you're having stories of people swept away, people dying, livestock lost, landslides are a result of heavy rain. But now to address this issue of climate change, when we spoke to the Minister of Environment, they told us it would be difficult to relocate everyone. The best that we can do as a country is to adapt and mitigate to climate change. And to do that, we need a lot of money, nearly our entire GDP. We need about 6 to 8 trillion shillings in order to adapt and mitigate. And how are we going to get this money? We are members of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Under that UNFCCC framework, we have to come up with a plan of how we will climate-proof ourselves and how we will stop further global warming as a country. we agree we are not responsible for climate change. As Africa, we are not as industrialized as the rest of the world. In fact, Kenya's contribution to climate change is 0.0004%. Yet we are suffering the impact as a third world country. So what we need this money for, how we are going to get this money, once we've submitted our plan to the UNFCCC, how we are going to climate proof ourselves, then the next thing we do is look for financing through climate finance institutes like the Adaptation Fund, which is a global fund. And also the Paris Agreement actually is trying to compel those developed countries to accept responsibility for the losses and damages that they are causing the third world countries and pay for some of those losses and damage. So Kenya hopes to get 70% of this financing from such places, like the first world countries and the Adaptation Fund. And I know the UK High Commission has also committed some money for Kenya specifically to try and solve this problem. So what will this money do? This money will do things like tree planting to fix the landscape, the degraded landscape, which is 1.5 million hectares of land degraded. And this degraded land actually is partly why Lake Magadi is partially drying. Yeah, because we found that very odd. When we arrived in Lake Magadi, we found it odd. Other lakes in the Rift Valley are rising, this one is drying.
Right.
And it was actually attributed to the SGR project. The SGR and the construction of that Maimahiu narrow road.
Yep.
They created a lot of loose soil and diverted some of the drainage when they were building the road. And then when they were done, they didn't return things the way they found them. So when the rain came, it swept all that soil into Lake Magadi. And now, part of Lake Magadi is underfilled, pushing the water 10 meters below.
I have to ask then, in terms of priority, how high on the list? Because this, as far as the Ministry of Environment is a front runner in all of this, we have to look at it. A national plan then must be followed. But in terms of a priority, I mean, we have rising lakes and then dry lakes. We have construction taking place where development is happening in the country, but at the same time, the environment is not being looked after. It looks as if it must be a collective effort, and it has to be high up there in terms of priority. Is it?
In terms of money, not really. Unfortunately, COVID-19 is taking up all of the resources. So right now, the only priority is the children who need to be in school. That's where the priority is right now. But in terms of everything else, the government is actually counting on you, the citizens, to pull your hands together and ensure that we solve our problems. And this is through, actually, parts of the plan are already being implemented through the Ministry of Agriculture by encouraging farmers to do climate smart farming, where you adapt your land to use as little water as possible, and also ensure that you have drought tolerant animals on your land. And now the Ministry of Environment told us that they have compelled every single ministry to ensure that they have a climate change unit.
Paula.
Sorry.
That climate has changed rather suddenly, hasn't it?
Yeah, it seems. So they told us every ministry will ensure that they have a climate change unit. And the job of this climate change unit is to look through every project that the ministry is going to undertake and assess the environmental impacts of those projects and how then the ministry can ensure that the environment is impacted as little as possible. And I'm assuming here they were targeting mostly the infrastructure ministry.
A lot of talk. Very good talk. Let's take a break at this point. 25 minutes after 8, we are speaking with NTV journalist Zainab Bondati. Did a story on the rising lakes, especially in the Rift Valley region, and what has happened with that. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation and looking at then what needs to be done. First of all, to address the immediate emergency that's there. Homes have been submerged. 24 schools submerged. How many? 12 schools submerged. 24 schools submerged, 12 health centers. So you actually don't have access to health centers. You don't have access to schools. You don't have access to people's homes. What is happening there? That's the conversation we're having. We'll be back shortly. Keep it right here.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM. Nyeri.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, Nairobi overcast most parts of the city, 21 the high and lows of 15. Looking into Nyeri, 18 degrees and mostly cloudy, looking at highs of 28 and lows of 13 today. And in Nakuru, 20 degrees, mostly cloudy conditions with highs of 25 and lows of 15. Eldoret this morning is also mostly cloudy. We'll see highs of 22 and then lows of 15 and mostly cloudy conditions for most parts of today. All right, let's take a look then into Kisumu, 20 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 19. We're looking at partly cloudy conditions in Kakamega today, currently at 18 degrees. We will see then today highs of 26 and lows of 17. Mombasa's cloudy at 26, highs of 31 and lows of 24. There is a chance of rain through most parts of today. We will see this coming through rain later. Taking a look then into Malindi, where we see partly cloudy conditions currently at 18 degrees. It'll go high to 26. Take a look out then into Dar es Salaam. We're at 27 degrees. It's mostly cloudy, highs of 30 and lows of 27. And then in Lagos, we see cloudy conditions for most parts of the morning. Highs of 30 and lows of 23. It's raining in Kinshasa, currently at 23 degrees. It'll go to highs of 30 and lows of 25.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Still heavy today. Rain is still coming down. Roads are still slippery. Everybody's moving a little bit slower than normal. We have some traffic still. Waiyaki Way from Kangemi to Westlands today is being called a nightmare. It's not moving. You can use the Red Hill bypass. Yes, longer, but it'll get you out of that traffic, at least for now. But if you're already past James Gishuru, then we might have a problem there getting into the CBD. Limuru Road coming from the Village Market is chock blocked, bumper to bumper. We're also getting into the CBD. It's very, very slow today, so there's traffic all over. Wherever you look, we're going to have to take care on this one, guys. You get stuck, or even more stuck than you already are. Let us know. Spice FMKE. Let's see how we can try and make it better. Text 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, it's 8:30. The conversation continues right here on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. So we are seeing the swelling lakes, especially in the Rift Valley region. And a number of people have been displaced. Over 10,000 people have been affected. In Baringo County alone, 24 schools, 12 health centers submerged, roads underwater. Some places where actually you've seen the footage and the photos where this is a clear road and then you see water and then you see road on the other side. And in between here, you're seeing boats and crocodiles. And this is happening right here in the Republic of Kenya. And the conversation is not really much focused on exactly what's happening to the plight of these people. And that's why we have journalist Zainab Wandati, who did a story on this, spent a number of days and nights traveling from all the way from Lake Turkana down to Lake Magadi and seeing what's happening. Lake Magadi drying up. Another one, Lake, what's the other lake that's drying up? Lake Kamnarok drying up. And then there are those lakes that are swelling, which include Bogoria as well, right? And there's a danger of two lakes that are mixing, one a freshwater lake and another a saltwater lake. Just tell us about that and the danger that this poses.
Baringo and Bogoria are close to each other, about I think 10, 15 kilometers apart. But scientists are telling us that now they think those two lakes have merged underground. Bogoria is salt water, Baringo is fresh water. You can imagine the ecological disaster that will happen if the two lakes actually do merge.
What would happen?
Actually, tell us about the ecological disaster. Yes.
Because of the theories that the lakes have already merged underground, it has affected the flamingo habitat on Lake Bogoria, such that the population of the flamingos has dropped drastically from 1.something million to now just about 100,000 flamingos.
Wow.
That's on Lake Bogoria. It is also said that Lake Oloiden and Lake Naivasha have also merged. But the scientists have said in order to actually prove this and to determine the exact scope of disaster that will happen, they would need to drill to establish where they, because you see the merging is not happening on the surface where you can see, it's happening underground. So they need to drill to find where they're merging from and to see how the ecology there has changed. But above ground, as the water keeps moving inland, do you know what else is happening? The maps of Kenya are changing. Because nobody knows for sure if this water is ever going to go back.
Right.
And there are already theories that where the water is moving to, it used to be there hundreds of years ago. So it's just simply going back to where it used to be. And now, as the water is pushing people further back, it's now taking over places that were not considered riparian land, but now has to be considered riparian land because it is underwater. So the maps of Kenya have to change. In fact, the Ministry of Environment told us they are still looking at how exactly the map will change, because now they have to redemarcate. That's the word, right? Redemarcate riparian land. And while you do that, that means you have to compensate these people you're pushing out. Where are they going to settle now? All of their land. In fact, we met a family in Bogoria that has lost about 30 acres in total. Every single time they get displaced. Now they are living on borrowed land up in some hills. And even up there in some hills, they managed to buy about 5 acres that again went underwater when River Subukia started to encroach on their side.
So if we look at the counties that have been affected so far, just from where you visited, so we have Namanga, that is not Namanga, but Magadi, that's Kajiado County.
Yes.
Then we have Nakuru County, we've got Baringo County, we've got Turkana County. Do we have West Pokot touched somewhere?
West Pokot actually got saved, the worst of it, because of the Turkana Dam.
Right.
They had estimated that it would spill. For the first time in history, the waters rose to levels higher than they've ever seen.
Yes.
Ever since the dam was built, they never anticipated the water would rise so high. And in fact, inside the dam, the way the dam is built, in part of the floodplain, there were people living there because it was dry land.
Yes.
They never thought that the water would come to them. But now when it started to rise and ikabaki to 1.8 meters ianze kuspill, hizo nyumba zote zikamezwa na maji. So West Pokot has a number of villages living around the Turkana Dam. It's a protected area actually. Many of those villages lost homes, but not so many. They lost, I think, about, the village elder told us about 20, 40 homes there. So they were spared the worst of it. While Lake Baringo, actually Baringo County took up the worst of it. In the story, if you remember in the NTV story, I mentioned a village in Bogoria that had lost nearly 300 homes. Actually a town. Those are 2 entire villages that were swept away.
So entire villages swept away, towns affected. What when you were down there, what did you see the effort of the national government and the county governments in at least addressing the plight of those people who today are affected?
Unfortunately, we didn't find any. In Turkana, we did find a community-based organization that was trying to do something. Since they can't move the people, the most they can do is bring them food and bring them clean water. Because remember, as the water is submerging your home, it is also submerging toilets.
Yep.
And therefore contaminating your source of drinking water. And that exposes you to things like cholera. So the people, the affected communities, they need fresh water and they need food. So we met a local community in Turkana that was trying to send water to communities. We couldn't tag along with them, unfortunately, because some of the places we are going are considered security risk. Areas like Todonyang there, that's where they were taking water mostly.
Zainab,
But
when you say there was...
situation is really bad.
When you say there was no county or national government activity, was that on that day or non-existent? What are we talking about here?
Baringo County told us that they will need resources from, they need help actually from the national government in order to actually do something. But they did say they were giving relief food to people who need it. But you see, relief food alone is not enough. How long will you sustain that?
Mm-hmm.
Do you even have the money to sustain it for as long as necessary? Because these are people who need new homes. Besides needing food, they need healthcare. They need new sources of income because they've lost their job.
Yeah.
What's the most you can do as a county government?
So as you spoke to the people
So they
themselves, had they been engaged by the government at any level on what then is going to happen to them? In terms of, so here you are today, this is where you can stay. We are going to provide sanitation, we're going to provide food, and this is the frequency with which we're going to be giving you food and water. And then going forward, we can start having a conversation on what we can do to help you regain your livelihoods. Did you get any feedback from the people on that?
Unfortunately, no. We didn't actually meet a group that said, this is what I got from the county government. They were all telling us, ni hivi tumejipanga wenyewe. Ni hivi tumesaidiana kama majirani. You know, Nobody was saying, serikali imenifanyia hivi, serikali imenifanyia hivi. If anything, they keep telling us, we need the government to do this for us. The only place we actually did get to feel the government was in Kamnarok. When you remember the lake in Kamnarok is bleeding. So the community there told us of the efforts the county government tried to do to save the lake from bleeding. And we did see the dikes that they tried to build, although at the time when we were there, they were already demolished. We did see that.
And why were they demolished?
Unfortunately, you can't hold that water. They haven't figured out how to hold it. Every time they build dikes and try to stop the water from leaving the lake, it figures out a way to demolish those dikes and keep moving on.
One would ask then, are those dikes, put it this way, let me ask the question. The engineering thinking, because this is an engineering feat, has it been adequately looked into? Why I'm asking this is, if you look at a city like, say, Jakarta was built on a swamp, all right? Now, it is being stated that over half that city is already under sea level. They have walls, okay? They've built walls, and they haven't lasted a week. They've lasted years. That prevents seawater from actually getting into. Now, if indeed one wanted to stop the water from doing what it does best, all I'm saying is that there are ways in which it can actually be done, because it's been done elsewhere. But the question I wanted to ask you wasn't this. This was just a by the way. When you said that the Ministry of Environment has ensured that every other ministry gets to understand the need to understand the backlash, I'm calling the backlash deliberately, of climate change, what are the efforts that they've made the Ministry of Education? Because that's where I think the influence should begin. Are we making climate change something? Because I think it should be a mandatory subject that children are taught in schools. Because even as they're learning in primary school, as they get older, this is something that's going to be their normal life going forward. These things that we're considering to be catastrophes, many of them will find this as a normalcy. Do you have any indication as to whether they have included the Ministry of Education and have had discussions about possibly ensuring that this is part of the curriculum?
They didn't tell us that, but they did say that each ministry is now assessing its needs in terms of climate change and how it will be scaled down into all of the activities. But if you move away from the national government and just come down to the county government, you may not know this, but some county governments actually have a climate change plan, and they've actually set aside funds for it. Counties like the counties in the Asol region, the arid and semi-arid counties, they have a climate change plan, they have a climate change committee, and they have a climate change fund. Makueni County, I think it's 2% of their budget. Isiolo County, about 1.5%, 2% of their budget. So what they do, they haven't really put it as part of their curriculum, but what they do, they build committees drawn from each county ministry, including the education county ministry. So they all sit down and they assess their needs in light of climate change, which are individual to their county. What do they need? What are their biggest needs that they need to address as a county? What does education need? What does the environment need? What does agriculture need? And then they come up with a budget, and then they disburse the funds to each ministry. Interestingly, I haven't heard yet of what the ministries of education are doing, even in the county level. Mostly you hear of the Ministry of Agriculture. But for Isiolo County, they did tell us that even though it's not exactly part of their curriculum, the fact that they live in a climate vulnerable environment has already exposed these children to the impact of climate change. So when you start to tell them, even if it's informally, what they can do about it, they're already receptive.
Zainab, I know you're not in government policy and planning, obviously, but there are certain things that you have seen over time, and you look at the plans that organizations have made, and even what you're talking about now in terms of what county governments have been able to do. And it would appear that you really know the regions in which we reside here in this country, the ASAL regions. You know that there are certain parts of the country which are susceptible to some of these environmental changes. Is it possible to have plans put in place, in some cases to even predict what could happen based on what has happened historically, and then have a plan in place, even if it means setting out periodical budgets to sort out some of these things? Is it possible, or do we have to wait until these things happen before something is done?
It's always possible to predict the climate. And I think which is why there's that climate change, the UN climate change framework, because the science is telling us that if we don't do anything about climate change, then we are going to hit 2 degrees, 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees warming, and we need to limit it to at least 1.5 degrees in order to make the world habitable. But if you look at Kenya specifically, the fact that Kenya Met is able to actually publish a report means they have the data. They have ways of predicting the data. In fact, actually, Kenya Met, is a very respectable organization across Africa. I don't know why Kenya partner Adarau. When they tell us it's going to rain, we don't pay attention. But they're actually a very respectable organization across Africa. Many African countries actually rely on them because they have very high-tech equipment of predicting the weather. And when I was reading the State of Climate report for last year, they told us Mombasa, Eldoret, Kitale, and I think Mandera are on a kind of a watch list in terms of temperature changes. For Kitale and Eldoret, because it's becoming too wet for maize farming. Mombasa and Marsabit are becoming too hot. In places like Nyandarua, the nights, which are usually very cold, are now becoming very warm, and they're hitting records. That it even went into the Kenya Met, the global. If you read the global report, they even mention, when you read the global report, they do a map and pin the what is it called? The temperature extremes or climate extremes in the different parts of the world. So they pin the country and they say what was the climate extreme in that country at that time of the year. So Kenya is on that map. specifically for, I think it's Nyandarua or Nakuru, one of those two places recorded some ridiculously low temperatures on one of the nights. So the fact that Kenya Met can actually give us this data, it means we can plan.
Sure.
Plan ahead. We can look at the data that they've given us already up until 2019 because the report, 2018 because the report goes all the way to 2018. We can look at that data, build some kind of pattern, and then mark and see what's going to happen next. Some climate scenarios that have been made for Kenya have said that some parts of the country will get wetter than they are. Some parts of the country will get cooler. And this is also evidenced by that report, that last year's report that says Eldoret and Italy are becoming too wet for maize farming.
So the
same report also says because of the changes in temperature patterns, like even Kericho becoming too warm for tea farming, malaria is also moving to places we've never seen before. Why is Baringo County reporting malaria cases?
I'm looking at that farming issue that you've talked about because we're talking about regions that are heavily reliant on agriculture, and then also the push to move towards agriculture and agribusiness. So this would have a direct impact on this. Are there things like, all right, if you can't farm maize in Kitale, if you can't farm tea in Kericho, are there now other options that can be given? Are we thinking in that direction already?
Yes, actually. The Ministry of Agriculture has several climate smart projects running, and in collaboration with other organizations like FAO and other development partners. So the good thing is farmers are already aware that the climate is changing, and they're already aware of what they need to do in order to adapt. Because if not the national ministry, the county departments of agriculture are telling them about climate change and how to climate proof themselves. So some farmers are doing things like conservation agriculture, which can be done both at a large scale and a small scale level. The farmers, we met some farmers in Makueni that are doing it on small scale level. Whereby conservation agriculture actually includes also things like zero till. Zero till means you do not haulimi shamba vile tumezoea na jembe. Utaweka tu herbicide, kill the weeds, and then you dig a hole only where you're going to put your seed. The good thing with that is when you're disturbing the soil as little as possible, evaporation does not happen as much. So that moisture is retained in the soil. And when the soil remains covered, also with the mulching and the grass that you leave on the ground, the sun doesn't hit the soil directly. So the seed in the ground is protected. And in turn, you know what happens? By the way, when you step on that ground, it's very soft. It feels spongy. Compared to shamba ile yenye imelimwa, when you till the land frequently, it eventually creates a hard pan, something called a hard pan. Unajua hata ukichukua jembe ukijaribu kulima hivyo nasikia udongo ni ngumu. You are struggling to get through that soil. Yet if you took the same jembe uende kwa ile shamba yenye imefanyiwa conservation agriculture, itapita very easily because the soil there is kind of soft. So this hard pan that you're creating when you constantly till the land means it also kind of alters the soil structure. And therefore making the soil unaiacha bare, unatoa hizo weeds zote unaziweka kando, unazichoma saa zingine.
Zainab, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying means that an entire sector of agriculture will put out of business agricultural machinery.
No, they're actually conservation agricultural machinery.
Like people will just move into those ones where you can now just be, instead of having a machine that goes chopping up all the land, just doing the holes where they're needed.
And they exist.
Engineering.
You just put the harrows. Yes, you use the harrows, which farmers already have. What you need to do, what they do now is to abandon the plows, like the disc plows. But then they use the harrows instead. For small scale farmers, they're using things called jab planters.
You can imagine that. All these projects, I'm sure they're happening. And we talk about this all the time. The Ministry of Agriculture has very many projects that are supported by other partners, left, right, and center. But And that's why I have a problem, is that there are very many and they appear to be disjointed. Because at some point, do they come together and say, so this project supported by the Danish, this one supported by the Canadians, this one supported by the Americans, this one supported locally here. All of that, we've come together to a certain county and we've been able to transform and change the habits of the entire population in this county to move into smart farming. How do we coordinate all that?
Unfortunately, agriculture is devolved. So the Ministry of Agriculture can't tell the counties what to do, if they want to make it public or not. So each county then decides. And mostly they do that through, on NTV, I have that Food Friday program. KTN, I know you have the Next Frontier.
Yep. We have Farmers TV.
Yes, you have Farmers TV. So these are the things that they use to communicate to farmers. And also there are so many mobile apps that send farmers information. So the good thing, at least farmers are not working in the dark.
Okay. Zainab, we want to thank you very much for joining us this morning and for telling us what you saw on the ground as you went around the country from Turkana all the way to Magadi and seeing what's happening in the lakes. Some lakes are drying up, others are filling up. All in all, the net effect is that people have been affected. There are people who've been affected, people who require assistance today, where the government needs to put in place programs for now and for the future so that we can address all these issues. Asante sana, and we hope to speak to you again soon.
Thank you, and look out for more coming soon on NTV. We are not done yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. Have a good day. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room, broadcasting on KTN Home, on Spice FM, on www.spicefm.co.ke. Time for us to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. Join us again tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. But this show broadcasts every morning on Spice FM. If you're in Nairobi, we are on 94.4. Mombasa, it's 87.9. 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru. Eldoret, 96.7. 90.9 in Nyeri. And Malindi, 97.7.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
so
Nairobi.
To 9 o'clock now. If you listen to that conversation of what's happening around the country, and then when you go to the people and ask them, so are you getting, what kind of response are you getting or support are you getting from the government? The government is working on plans. They've set up a task force to understand what's happening. Then they've also come up with recommendations that will be area specific on this is what's happening in Nakuru. So this is how we can respond in Nakuru. This is how we can respond in Baringo, in Turkana, in Magadi. But the people on the ground still haven't received that kind of assistance in the way that they require to receive that kind of assistance. What does that tell you, City? Because you see, we're dealing with the long term. We need to go into access this fund because we are members of I don't know which international organization. When we get the money, we'll be able now to allocate that money into planting of trees to save our environment. But today, what are you doing?
You know, the thing that there are many things that Zainab mentioned, but the thing that actually got my attention is that the human resource capacity, the enormous human resource capacity that this country has, and the capable and able people who actually work within the government and who actually know exactly what they should do and what is what they do. That came to my mind. Now, if you look at the counties, you'll also find that the counties also have similar human resource.
Yep.
But again, we have said this on many occasions in this show, the gap then comes in. The support that is required to merge this knowledge with practical solutions that can be implemented. These guys come up with what ought to be done.
Yeah.
Now then they're getting done.
And that requires leadership.
It requires leadership. The bottleneck then begins there. Like you talked about counties putting aside money in their budget to cater for climate change.
Yep.
Yes. They may even put money aside. What then do they do?
What do they do with that money?
After they've done that?
Well, you've put aside 1.5% of your budget
Yes.
to look at the impact of climate change. So what do you do with that money? How do you focus that money that you've allocated.
And is it really enough? Because if you take, for instance, let's say the annual budget is, say, 6 billion, for instance, okay?
Yeah.
10% of 6 billion is 600 million, all right?
Yeah.
1% is 60 million. What are you going to do with 60 million exactly? What are you going to do with 60 million? If it is 1.5, then it is 90 million. So all I'm saying is, even as they budget for it, surely the budgeting tells me that they don't take climate change seriously enough.
Yep.
And it is something that could actually affect their lives. It's something you need to plan for because it's going to happen. And it has nothing to do with you. If we have glaciers the size of the state of Florida is like a third or in size of this country. Imagine an ice block about the third of this country, okay, moving and melting. How much do you think that is going to affect the levels of water? And it's one. So all I'm saying is these things that we're talking about with regards to climate change are real and they're happening and they're going to continue happening. And they will affect us. So anyone who is thinking ahead in terms of wanting to ensure that they can leadership again, as you say, this climate change and the effects of it is something that ought to be taken a lot more seriously than we're taking it.
In terms of priority, it has to really be up there because what do we have? Unprecedented. And, you know, I don't want to say that it did take the country by surprise, but it should not have. Just early warning systems are available.
They've been there for some time.
You know, planning ahead can be done in tandem with those early warning systems because you have them there. You have international organizations set up for that purpose alone. You know, mitigation and then evaluation after that, set up for that alone. So governments have help in terms of what they can actually do. You have families being swept away. You have schools, entire institutions being swept away by flooding. You have entire ecosystems then being altered. And then what are we hearing today? Farming practices upon which people have known for hundreds of years now being taken away. You will not be able to farm maize in Kitale the way you were able to do before. Kenya having been known for Kericho and its tea fields, you may not be able to do that. So in terms of then even changing those practices and saying that agriculture is the bedrock of the future of the economy of this country, and already the very makeup of that is being altered, those are things that you have to start looking at. It's already late in the game, if you ask me, because the thing is already here.
You know, you're talking about warning signs. When salt water and freshwater meet, that area is what we refer to as an estuary. They've existed from time immemorial. Brackish water, which is what that water is actually called. If you dig a well, say somewhere on the coast or in many parts of the country, you come across brackish water. You know what that means? It means they've been mixing for the longest time. The only problem now, it's on a large scale.
Yep, it's the scale of it. And not just to listen back and hear, the Kenya Met has been collecting all these data. It has these data. It has been producing reports. That means that they've been reporting to somebody. And that person is an expert also. They go and report to someone else who is a political appointee, who then now starts playing politics on the decisions that are made. This is where our issues start falling. You know, imagine now you're talking about Kitale. If Kericho is not able to produce tea,
then that industry was
in a couple of years' time. So what are you doing now to start thinking of what can happen in a couple of years to come?
Zainab mentioned that these reports are from 1901.
Yeah.
My goodness. There's
and they're produced by a body that is here locally, that is recognized internationally. One member
and
of
respected
the World Meteorological Organization. Okay, so what happens is we just have conversations here, there, and the other places. Anyway, time for us to take a break and look at the traffic at the top of the hour. In the next hour, we continue more conversations. Keep it right here. Good morning, 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So about Kiambu Road, that is an absolute mess when you're trying to join Thika Road this morning coming from Kiambu Road. It's not happening because it's now 6 lanes and everybody's trying to join at the same time. That is a traffic nightmare. It's horror. Mombasa Road is looking quite clogged all the way from the SGR today, and it's moving very slowly outbound to the city. Coming out of Westlands, that was something that people were not very excited about to be stuck in. Hopefully that will dissipate as we go along. Coming to Landys Road, entering into the CBD from that area, that also has improved much. Now, we'll see what happens in about half hour or so. hopefully we get out of the madness that was this Tuesday morning concerning traffic. Stuck anywhere? Let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start
it's
your
2
day.
minutes after 9. So we also wanted to have alongside Zainab Wandati, who went to the ground to see this and file the story. We also wanted to have the PS in the Ministry of Environment, Dr. Chris Kipto. Dr. Kipto was recently transferred to that ministry, but he told us that he has some meetings. They're in Nakuru, they're going around the country. We can talk to him later in the week. So we'll bring them in so we can have that conversation with him as well on what are they doing? What are they doing? Okay. We're beginning the hour, City. Tell us about the mice and the cats.
Well, pay attention, when the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby. You can now stop paying attention.
When the mouse laughs at the cat,
there's a hole nearby.
There's a hole nearby.
There's an escape route nearby.
Right.
There's refuge nearby. And usually I think it would laugh when it's fairly close to that.
Right.
Remember as children, when someone wanted to say poke fun at you or make you feel the
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then they take off.
Yes.
And they're close to either their elder sibling,
yes,
or a prefect, or there's a teacher nearby, and they know.
They know very, very well
the teacher
that
is around the corner.
any movement that you make will be halted almost as quickly as you started the movement.
Yep. So this being the year of the BBI, we'll be having political conversations every day as we look into how we heal this country. Okay? Now, yesterday, let's just call him the co-principal in this government, my brother Raila Odinga, in Karen, he hosted Maina Njenga, who was the former leader of the Mungiki. He is now chairman of something called the Team One Nation. It's a youth umbrella organization. And he's CEO of an organization called Amani Sasa. This is Maina Njenga. So they were in Karen yesterday, and they were talking about the future of the country and what needs to be done, what needs to happen to ensure this cohesion and peaceful coexistence of communities in this country. And this is where the ODM leader Raila Odinga said, let's consider this issue that the president raised on Saturday. Of kama mkisema hivi basi, even I can say that there are some communities that have been at the helm of this country, and we should now give others a chance to lead. And he said, maybe we should also now start seriously thinking about this rotational presidency. It's a key to healing the country. He says a multi-ethnic society that Kenya requires appointments that are made from across the country. He gave the example of Switzerland, which he says they have the rotating presidency. They have got the cantons, and the presidency rule from one region to the other. He says, then this would be a way to go. This would be something that we can consider. Rotating presidency. So rotating presidency basically is saying, now let's look. Jomo Kenyatta, Kikuyu. Daniel Arap Moi, Kalenjin. Moi Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta, Kikuyu. Then, can we now have other communities, other tribes rising to the top of the country, to the helm of the country? Where would we start? Where would we end? How would we come up with a formula for rotation? If we are not able to do a formula for rotating other things. Anyway, How would we go about this, city, in
Well,
your thinking?
think about it. It isn't just Switzerland. If the European Union has a rotating presidency within the council.
Yep.
And the understanding is that everyone who is a member should have an opportunity to be at the helm.
To be at the helm, yes.
Yes, exactly.
Even Africa does that, the African Union. The East African Community, the chair of the summit is rotational.
It is.
If it is Kenya this time, then next time it's going to be so and so. It's understood.
So this isn't something new.
WTO, as we were having those elections the other day,
Yes.
the reason why we had two strong African women coming up is because it was considered that now this time it needs to go to this other part of the world. These other parts of the world.
Consider also, you're talking about the Secretary General of the UN.
Yep.
It isn't announced, it isn't talked about broadly, but there's also that understanding.
There's an understanding.
That, okay, it has been in this part of the world long enough, it's about time it moved to this other part of the world.
Yep.
Yes. You see, this isn't, the concept in and of itself is not new. Why it's considered new is against a backdrop of the very fierce competitive nature of our presidential elections. How then do you put up a structure that ensures that even with the competition or with the changed competition, the understanding is that this region will have it?
Yeah.
Because as things stand, how do you guarantee it?
Why are you
Because-
bringing in regions? We are talking about tribes, man.
Well,
region, you're trying to lump things up.
Tribes belong to
I
regions.
see the game you're playing.
Tribes belong to regions. Tribes belong to regions.
True. That's true.
And why I brought in regions is actually, and you've got me right there, it's deliberate. Because how many tribes do we have in Kenya currently?
48.
Precisely. So, essentially, 48 times 5?
Yeah, you see, we can find a way of rotating this thing around.
That's why I brought in just region, and you nipped it in the bud. Because if you're talking 48 times 5.
How many regions do we have?
Regions?
Yes.
I would go to province.
Okay. Why are we going to province? Let's go to counties.
Counties are 47. 47
Yes.
times 5?
Yeah.
I'd rather the province. It's more rational, if you ask me.
Okay. So if we go to Rift Valley province, right, and you give it to one, now you say because there's a Kalenjin that has led, you're basically saying Turkana cannot lead, Samburu cannot lead, Masai cannot lead until we go round. So that's where the problem comes in with the province.
Actually,
if you go to Eastern province, then you're saying that you have to start thinking about the Rendile, coming all the way down to the Boranas and the Kambas and the Embu.
Yes.
So you guys, all of you think who?
Look, if this discussion is to be a discussion, then every perspective has to be given a chance.
Right.
Okay? I have brought in regionals because tribe, as I said, do the maths.
You'll never finish.
Do the maths and tell me how that's going to work out.
You know why I'm saying tribe? Is because even in our politics, when we talk about regions, we don't talk about regions that way. We talk about regions in terms of tribal blocks.
Indeed, we do.
When we say, for example, that we're talking about Western Kenya in the minds of many people is Luya. They forget that there are other tribes that live in the
It's
Western
like
part.
Rift Valley, it is assumed it's Kalenjin.
It's Kalenjin.
It is not.
Yes. And when you say Nyanza, you assume that
Luo.
Nyanza is Luo.
It is not.
Kisis and Kuria are in Nyanza. So,
You see, this representative aspect of regional blocks
right.
will take care of the tribal factor within themselves. You've mentioned Migori, so let me use Migori as an example.
Nyanza.
Migori
Okay, go
County.
to Migori.
It was understood the Kurias are part of Migori County. So if you have a governor who is Luo, the deputy must be
Kuria.
And they also went further. Women's rep
Let's look
must
at women
also
rep.
be Kuria.
And then the senator can be Luo.
Can be.
Okay.
There's even now when you look at the counties, let me talk about Kisumu County, for instance. All right? You have the governor who comes from a place called Seme. Okay? Sub-county.
Right.
You have the deputy who comes from a place called Nyakach. Sub-county.
Right.
Now they have to balance it. The Speaker of the National Assembly has to come from probably
the other sub-county.
Yes, exactly. Women's rep. It's how they balance it. So the balancing act is already known. It's not something that you're going to introduce.
All right.
Politically, people already understand that there's a need for people to feel this representation. And they may not even say it loudly, but it's understood. Once your region has had governor, you're not having it again. Somebody else has to have it. I'm not talking about something that isn't already happening. It's actually already happening.
So the first governor of Kisumu was not from Seme.
Nope.
It was from a different
Kano.
county. All right. Was that the reason why they then picked a Same person? Because we were considering, no. Mkuwa nayo.
Look at it this
Because the area I can remember they did that was up in the north, northeastern, in Mandera especially, when the clan, there was there, sat down and said, this thing, we are rotating it, which clan takes it this
Yes.
time? And I remember Bill O'Carroll raising a fuss about it and saying, come on, you guys, you can't decide for the people. He's out.
Actually, he had his reasons for saying so. But the communal structure in that part of the world, the elders have the final say on these matters, from what I've understood. When that changes, then I will understand it. But that's how it is. Now, I'm saying this division of spoils is something people understand. It's not something they don't understand.
I think you're going to have to apply the mathematics. If before that, it was an issue of content, it was a matter that was contended with highly. I mean, until you saw so many things happening. And the only way to be able to get people satisfied is to share. And you have to go in with the formula. Because the only way to solve the problem is using the formula. If you don't use the formula, you continue to have the problems that you had seen in the past. So if there's an understanding, look, this is the way we are going to divide it. Your turn will come. Your turn will come. And you have to apply the formula. If you leave it to emotions and romanticize the whole thing, you get in trouble.
So you've got to be very clear that in 2052, the presidency shall come from this particular region.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's all known. So
It's known to
you're
everybody.
gearing towards
So
that.
you simply wait for it.
Exactly. Even now, look at Nigeria as an example. Muhammadu Buhari is the president. His deputy is from the south. Osinbajo is from the south. Everybody in Nigeria knows
his name
that
again?
the next
Osinbajo.
president. Everybody knows that the next president of Nigeria
Sounds like
will
a-
be from the south.
It's known.
It is known, and
Right.
his deputy will be from
the
the
north.
north.
It is known.
So even when you are selecting, you don't have to do many mathematics. You already know going in that, look, guys, the problems that we saw before, that doesn't mean that you stop the polarization that tribal that tribal politics brings into place. It doesn't mean it ends. It just means that the issue that was going to bring contention before, we already know. So nobody can complain. Maybe we agreed. We agreed. So now let's just go forward knowing that coming out of these political parties, your candidates, as you are selecting, just to know that all of them must come from the south. Nobody will make the mistake of presenting a northern presidential candidate for
Your party
2023.
comes up with a northern presidential candidate.
Who are you? Where are you going?
You can be independent if you like.
That's your business.
And you'll really
Nobody
be
will select
independent. You will independently lose.
And each of those candidates, you know that your running mate
But
must
how was this?
come from the north.
Is this anywhere in the law?
It's understood. It's understood.
It's a gentleman's agreement.
Absolutely.
Which is why Goodluck Jonathan was trying to look at being another kind of gentleman by trying to stand again. And he was told, boss.
Come and go and sit down.
boss. But you see, it's a gentleman's agreement, which runs the risk
Because they
of
saw-
somebody
because
coming
they
to
saw
try
the-
and play the game.
But you saw the problems that it had brought before.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is it's a gentleman's agreement. So after a couple of years, when you have a new generation that does not remember the problems that we saw before, they can play with that. They can tinker with it. Imagine if it was actually now entrenched into some form of law, into a constitution, and says we shall be rotational.
But does it, you could do that. People have done so, but you need to. There's an empire that has been run on traditions to date.
The United Kingdom.
Yes. This constitution written down, this is... People know. All I'm saying is, yes, it would be a good thing to write it down so that people know exactly what to do and what
because
not
of the
to do.
misbehavior of human beings.
Given human nature being what it is,
Yes.
it is better if you put it under lock and key.
For example, let's look at what General Daudi Tonja did with the military. All right. Now the military knows. In fact, it can even project X number of years from this point, the general will come from the army. X number of years, the general will come from the Navy or from the Air Force. It's very clear. Right now, the army is already thinking of the next X number of years when they become the next general, because right now the general is from the army. The Navy knows we've just left from being the head of the defense forces. So our next turn is after this army guy, then after the Air Force person, then now that's when we shall be. It's good. They've established that tradition and it's working well. So on paper, theoretically, that whole thing of let's have rotational leadership is very, very good. But we are dealing with Kenyan politicians. Let's start with what we are talking about here. So we have a constitutional moment, but it's appearing like a light bulb now at this point of let's make this rotational. when the whole idea of introducing 5 new seats into this was based on the same kind of thing, let's share the cake, but nobody wanted to say, this is how we shall rotate, so we share this cake. If you are telling me that these 5 seats shall be rotational in this particular way, that you shall have, if a president is from here, the deputy president is from here, the prime minister is from here, the 2 deputy prime ministers are from here, and this is how we shall rotate, such that you guys are not condemned to always being deputy prime ministers all your life.
You can aspire to be greater.
No,
Or even settle for less.
you are guaranteed that you will rise.
Listen, let's statement. You're not condemned because this is the way we think. You see, the position is a communal position.
Yes.
We. So if you're an assistant minister, your people are assistant ministers.
Yes, we are taking the position of assistant minister in the next term. We, all of us.
Because that's the conversation we're having. We're making it
rotation.
rotational so that all of you feel that now it's your turn to be in the State House. Or it's your turn to be in Karen in the deputy president's office. Or it's your turn to be in such and such a place which will be now the prime minister's residence.
So that your people can also visit you.
You know.
Yes, in this house of theirs.
Our house.
This rotational presidency thing, good idea in this country. I don't see it working.
Unless it's written down.
And it cannot be written down. Not by this current crop of leaders. Because they will not agree. For example, if we say now, okay, so presidency, we know Kikuyus have had the presidency 3 times. Okay? Luyas have had the vice presidency 3 times. Kijana Wamalwa, Mudi Awori, and Musalia Mudavadi. Okay, so let's also say Luos have had the vice presidency once and prime minister once. Yes. Let's say Kambas have had the vice presidency once. Aya, now let's have a Masai. Has had a vice presidency. George Saitoti. Okay. Aya. So at what point are we ever going to have a talk about that person who is a Rendile or a Pokomo? Or a Bajun.
Sorry, what?
Bajun.
Lamu.
Okay, thanks.
Right?
Well, then, if
At what
that's
point
the way
do
you're
we
going
bring
to
them
go,
up? Or shall we say, okay, Coast, they shall produce one person at the top of this table. So, yeah. So, the Mijikenda, who is the Giriama, the majority, so Giriama.
the conversation is already happening. We saw today, or rather we saw a couple of days ago, that the Coast MP said they're going to, or the Coast leader said they're going to...
That conversation has been on for the longest time.
Leave ODM and form their own
That is
party
all right.
by June 2020.
Where are they going?
Wait now, why? So that they can have a strong coastal force when it comes to leadership in
negotiation,
this country.
right?
You see?
So they can have that kind of negotiation.
Exactly.
Murembe,
So they can come,
Murembe unity conversation is the same.
They can come arguing as coast. You see, that's what you're saying. When will that conversation take place? It is things like this that will bring about this
it is
conversation.
when will they get that guarantee that
who is giving
the
the
person...
guarantee?
See, these people were talking about rotational presidency.
But an agreement has to come with guarantees, surely. Otherwise, it's not an agreement. And also, there are coastal parties that have already been formed. Okay, this is just a new one.
With the thought that because they are the kingpins, that they will be the ones that will hold or wield the most influence.
And that's where, that's where the problem comes in. Individual selfish political leaders will want to be the ones who actually decide how this cake will go. These are the ones who are going to decide, no. You see, if we look at it, we can say Somalis have already been risen very high up. Somalis have been leader of majority in the National Assembly. So they're okay.
But ask yourself this question. The northern part of Kenya, we've had independent parties that have come out from that region. All right? And you probably even have 1 or 2 representatives from that. It is good that people have parties that they feel represent their interests. It is good that they do. If you talk about self-determination, it is a good step. But there's one little detail here. Convincing the people in the regions that you represent that this is a good step. Number 1. Forming it is easy. Unveiling it, easy. But having done so. Because right now, if you're giving the coast as an example, there are 2 kingpins who have actually been enthroned.
In the coast?
Oh, yes.
Who and who?
Ali Hassan Joho was
and
enthroned.
Kingi, yeah.
Yes. No, just Ali Hassan Joho. And
Mvurya.
Yes. The group of people who represent the camp that Mvurya supposedly belongs to enshrined him as
now their leader.
Official spokesman. And Ali Hassan Joho, on his trip to Garsen, also got himself enthroned as the kingpin. So we have the coast has 2 kingpins. And remember, Taita Taveta has been left out of this discussion. And Taita Taveta is in the coast, just so that you understand. Look, leadership dynamics and the politics of this country, it makes perfect sense to have your own political vehicle. As to whether you'll have a following, that maybe will take place. That discussion can take place once you've formed this particular vehicle. But we are yet to see. But you know what you're saying? It's not that you won't have followers, but you're saying you want to change people's mind after years of following a certain thread and a certain trajectory to change it to this new one. That is usually a very difficult thing to do. It's not that they don't understand self-determination. What they may not understand is that these leaders who are now presenting themselves as brand recently cleaned, brand new leaders, that's why they're leaders. In the time they've been leaders, what on God's good earth have they done that is memorable?
Yeah. But they've hoisted themselves, and some have been hoisted as the Kinarawa.
Yes.
Kinarawa Pwani, kingpin of the coast. Kingpin of Mount Kenya. Kingpin.
The real debate is not even in the politics, because these are politicians having chats among themselves. Right?
Yeah.
The real discussion is the people who actually decide who they're going to listen to.
Those are the ones. Let's take a break. 22 minutes after 9, we want you to join the conversation. Do you support this idea that has been floated by the former Prime Minister and ODM leader Raila Odinga, a rotational presidency in the country? How would it work? Do you support that idea? And how would it work?
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. The weather with Spice FM.
Overcast in most parts of Nairobi. 19 degrees. We'll see highs of 21 and lows of 14 today. Mostly cloudy in Nyeri at 19, highs of 20 and lows of 13. The low will be 15 in Nakuru today. Cloudy conditions at 20. It's also 20 in Eldoret. Mostly cloudy, highs of 22 and lows of 14. Kisumu, light rain this morning at 20, highs of 24 and lows of 19. Where it's mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 20. We'll see highs of 26 and lows of 17. Mombasa is mostly cloudy at 27, highs of 31 and lows of 24. It's also cloudy in Malindi at 27. The low will be 26 with highs of 30. Also, Kenya into Kampala is mostly cloudy at 20 with highs of 24 and lows of 19. Dar es Salaam is mostly cloudy today at 25 with highs of 30. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 18 degrees, highs of 24 and lows of 18, where rain showers rule the skies in Lagos. 25 degrees at the moment with highs of 32 and lows of 24. It's mostly sunny for a change in Kinshasa at 23. That'll be the low for today with highs of 31. Beijing is sunny at 3, highs of 5 and lows of -6. Rain showers in Paris at 6 degrees, highs of 10 and lows of 6. While in London, light rain at 10, highs of 10 and lows of 2. And finally into Tuesday morning in New York, clear skies at 2 with highs of 5 and lows of 0.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
25 minutes after 9. This is
94.4.
Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. 0719-012-600. Raila Odinga says he supports the idea of a rotational presidency. He says this is a way to ensure inclusivity. Gives the example of Switzerland, where they have the canton system and it's rotational. Let's just look at also other institutions where we're saying, for example, in the African Union, the chairmanship of the African Union is rotational. The chairman of the African Union Commission is also rotational. If you look at other world bodies, if you look at our military, that's how you find now it's General Kibochi, who is from the army. The next will be an Air Force general. The next will be a Navy general. And we know this very well. So how do we do this in the country? Rotational. Is it rotational for tribe? Rotational for region? Rotational? How do we then divide it if we were to say, yes, it's a good idea? Let's have that conversation with you. 0719-012-600 or Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter. Jimmy in Malindi. Good morning.
Good morning too. How are you?
Salama kabisa. Are you well?
I'm not so well. After we talked on the 3rd,
Yep.
on the 4th of January, I lost my son.
Pole sana.
1 year, 6 months, and 21 days from pneumonia. And this came when we went, it was a septic pneumonia. It came when we went to the hospital and there were no clinical officers, and all the private hospitals recommended us to go to the general hospital after coming from a private hospital. They recommended us to go and see the doctors in the national hospital there, Malindi sub-county. And then when we reached there, the doctors really helped, but the clinical officers and the nurses were not on, so they tried their best. After like 2 hours, my son passed. And this came from the strike that is going on, because if the strike was not on, I would not have taken them to this lousy private hospital.
Right.
You know? But anyway.
Very, very unfortunate, Jimmy.
Jimmy, please accept our condolences.
Yeah. Thank you so much. But I still remain positive, as I was advised.
It's important, Jimmy. Pole sana for this.
Yeah. So what I can say, we don't, this regional rotational,
Yep.
before they were not working for the leaders who are in power now. But currently, they see that this is the way. And there is nothing bad, because I am from a certain tribe where we have had a leader from our tribe went and another one came in, and even others are still in even now.
Yeah.
But I have never had a simple life. I have never had. I would like the minority tribe in Kenya to get the leadership of this country. And then you will hear the minority will be crying like exactly how we are crying when our leader is in power. Yes, because...
So you don't think
not
it solves
about-
anything if it becomes rotational?
Yes. There is nothing positive in rotational things.
But maybe, Jimmy, just maybe,
Yes.
the fact that then that person from the minority will experience, just because my person is at the helm, does not change a thing about my life, then maybe that creates that harmony, that helps them to look at you differently.
It doesn't help in anything. The
What
only
do you mean,
thing that
Jimmy?
leader will... It doesn't help in anything. The only thing is that that leader from another tribe, that now we see it is nice for another tribe to be a leader, will only be a puppet of the tribal masters.
Okay.
So there is nothing that will change.
No change at all. No value.
Yeah, they clone something. They clone a leader and say, oh, this is from this tribe. So now this one should be the right one to join and be here.
Okay.
Because it's from the minority tribe. And that leader will have no say.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy. And once again, our condolences to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stay positive, brother.
We have healed.
Okay. Samuel in Meru, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM.
Good morning.
Okay, my contribution to the discussion
is
very simple. I do support the rotational presidency.
Why?
Recently, I had talks in Western, among Western leaders, Western Kenyan leaders, who are trying to say that the road network in one county like Murang'a is equivalent to the 4 counties of, Western road network connectivity. In Kenya, economics is related to being politically correct.
Mm-hmm.
It is the regime of the day, where they come from, determines where resources are distributed. So I want to believe that if we have a kind of arrangement where we have the presidency or these big positions rotated, there will be a lot of stability. One, because we really need stability for more than even 30, 40 years.
Right.
And there is always this one element known as perceived inclusion. It's not like we will benefit directly, but the perception of being in government
I see.
will really lead to stability. And now that because politics is correlated to economic, we'll have a lot of time discussing about our challenges as a country.
So we'll have removed this particular headache out of the equation, and now we start dealing with the real issues.
Yes, like for example, we are so much preoccupied as a country discussing about BBI and politics and what have you. Yet we have doctors. Nobody's even talking about the doctor strike. Nobody's talking about the pandemic.
We have swollen legs.
About the debt, the cash crunch. Nobody's talking about the debt crisis in Kenya. We are still talking about politics. Even if the deputy president, who's the hustler, if he takes over this nation, he's not going to enjoy, because he will be preoccupied, paying debt and alleviating the lives of many people who will be suffering. So I do support the issue of rotational presidency on those premises.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you very much. Have a good day in Meru.
Good day. Good day.
Let's speak to another Samuel who's in Nairobi. Samuel, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you?
I'm good.
All right. Rotational.
Eric, yes. My contribution, actually, I think these guys, politicians in Kenya, they normally play with our heads. The first conversation we need to talk in this country is about corruption. That is our first priority. Even if today we import Obama to come and become president of Kenya, if I can walk in Kemsa and get a tender, then it's useless. It's useless to talk about politics in Kenya unless we talk about corruption. I am telling you, Kenya, we are very, very rich. Very, very rich. If since Moi, Goldenberg, until today, we are still alive, then it means we are very rich. They kill left, right, center, but we are still alive.
Right.
So it means the first conversation we need to talk about is corruption. Once we talk about corruption and we make sure these people go to jail, then everybody in Kenya will feel like we are the citizen of this country, because money will trickle down. If we say we are to buy medicine today, that money goes directly to the medicine. I'm telling you, nobody will fight. We will never care about who is in the reign, who is the president, who is the prime minister. But the biggest problem is
corruption.
People stealing.
Thank you, Samuel.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Have a lovely day.
To do this in a radio, live radio.
Asante sana. Thank you very much for doing that. 26 minutes to 10 o'clock, 0719-012-600. Do you support this idea that's being proposed by ODM leader Raila Odinga, a rotational presidency? If it's in this region this time, let it go to another region next time. Should it be regional? Should it be actual tribal? Should it be provincial, county? What do you think? Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we pick your calls.
Spice up your life.
Okay, so where traffic still is this morning is on Naivasha Road, headed off on Gong Road and then in that direction. We don't know what's happening up there, but it's causing some problems this morning. Thika Road looking much better, trying to get into the CBD. There was some traffic right around Pangani there, and that took some time to get rid of. But we still see some traffic around certain parts of the city. The roads are still slippery, so asking everybody to be careful. That issue where everybody got off Thika Road and went towards Maroroi, now that is still a traffic mess. Coming out of Western, it's also still moving quite slowly. So it looks like traffic is going to go spill over past traffic hour today. Let's keep taking a look at how that progresses. Talk to us if you need to. Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4
Rotational
Spice.
presidency, how then would you roll it out? Would you say regional? If you say regional, and then you consider how we've been considering Central Kenya is Mount Kenya. So basically you're telling Ambere and Tharaka that you cannot be presidency and cannot rise to the presidency because you've had 3 presidents from Mount Kenya.
You know, this is where now the horse trading comes in. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will have an interest in this, and there will be committees set and task forces to look into this and to look at what Kenyans want and what they don't want and how they want it and how they don't want it. But this is a good debate because in many ways it will enhance cohesion within regions because you have to agree that the representative will come from
this.
Yes, and it will be this person or it will be from among these people.
And is there something
you have
wrong,
to agree.
Is there something wrong with taking turns? Because the opposite, look, let me, as simple and as rudimentary as it sounds, is there something wrong with taking turns? Because you've seen that the opposite has caused problems. Until you're even having an entire national conversation spanning over 2 years, spending money that people are having issues about to deal with an issue that you said is the problem when it comes to Kenya's politics.
The concept of taking turns has actually changed tremendously in our lives as Kenyans. Let me explain what I mean. From childhood, we were inducted into this thinking of taking over.
You, then me, then you, then
yes,
me.
If you had an elder sibling, whether you're a girl or a boy, those clothes were passed down.
Down to you.
So you could find a small boy wearing a girl's clothing, but simply because those are the clothes that were available. For books, the parent bought the books once. They were just passed down. Simply because the curriculum rarely changed, and if it changed, you still use the same textbooks. So even in everyday life, it's
But
not.
you know, firstborn is not rotational, eh?
No, it isn't.
Those games you are talking
Maybe
about.
you can apply it to there's one toy. There's one toy in the family.
Passing,
I play with it
passing
now.
down is
then I play with
very
it's
different
very
from
different.
that thing of saying you're
Actually,
the firstborn and the,
what
and
I
the
said
role
was
that you play as a firstborn is rotational.
Inculcating the role of passing it down. The concept of it is what I was trying to present. The reality is a different issue because even if you're talking about regions, there are regions that are more developed than others. Even within, say, for instance, a section, let's say the coast. There are parts of the coast that are infinitely better. If you go to Tana River requires a lot more development than probably other parts of the coast. If you go to Taita Taveta and compare it to Kwale, you'll find the difference is huge.
I would liken it to that your parents bought something and there's this one thing and there's 10 of you and they're only going to buy one. And everybody wants their experience with this thing and everybody was fighting over it at some point that would cause conflict, whichever way you wanted to look at it. So the parents essentially said, and we all agreed, that let's take turns with it. You can have it for some hours and experience it. You can then have it for the next time until it goes through the cycle. And then you start again so that everybody has their experience with it. So nobody can say at any point that I don't know what this thing felt like. Nobody can say that. I experienced it and now it is your turn. So you know that you had time with this thing at a particular time, you were able to experience it. Never can you say that you never had a chance. That concept, there's really nothing wrong with it. You only have one, but you have so many people and everybody wants the experience. So there was nothing wrong with taking turns.
Let's go to the phone lines. Ed Gitonga is on the line. Ed, hello.
Hey, morning, guys.
Good morning.
Well, I'm sorry, I've been out of touch for a while. I've been down with pneumonia too.
Don't be sorry.
Yeah, actually, I want to send my condolences to the other listener. Now,
Jimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah. It's, I know how it feels. Actually, yesterday I was in hospital in Nyeri Health Town Center, and I was there from 7 a.m. And actually, I was being attended to around 9. I was among the first people, so I can understand the pain.
Yeah.
So, rotational presidency. You know, at times, when you hear someone utter comment as such, or maybe like what the president said on Mudavadi's burial, Sana Mudavadi's burial. When you hear like that, then that is when you realize that person doesn't have the country's interest at heart. You cannot take a whole country and then subdivide it into tribal linings. Look at this now. People actually have a mentality that if a leader comes from your place has development, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, for example, in Nyeri County, we have Rolingo Stadium. Right now, it's still weeds.
Rolingo, we are going to make it in the next
6 months.
Don't worry.
At least, have we at least started doing something on it?
They still don't know who owns the land.
Oh, so at least it as an owner. All right.
When it was being launched,
yeah.
tuliona tinga kadhaa and actually funny thing, I'm not telling you from hearsay. I pass by the place each and every damn day when I'm going to my place. In that place there's nothing going on, and the story has been 9 months. I mean, it was a pregnancy, there's no miscarriages, man.
So it doesn't. From where you sit, Ed, what you're saying, it doesn't help if you make it rotational.
It doesn't help if you make it rotational. It depends. It's on the lines of the ideologies and the development that person has to bring to the table. Just because that's the way to culture. It's a myth.
Ed, consider for a single second, you've been in paid employment, have you not?
For a time I was.
Yes. Now, imagine if you work for an organization where there was no clear structure as to how you can be promoted. So if you started off as a cleaner, even if you went to school, you'd still remain a cleaner. How long would you stay in that organization?
Not for long.
Precisely. So, I mean, the discussion is just that in politics in this country it may be new, but this idea of rotating, it's not really new. Somebody moving up, somebody retiring, somebody moving out. Human beings do these things all the time. It's just that with presidencies, most people seem to think it's for life.
Well, but now, I think, City, you're mixing issues with rotation and succession.
No, it is rotation. Succession is rotation.
Yeah.
You rotate the leadership.
Yes, but you're not rotating. Succession is not necessarily guaranteed a rotation.
Actually, it does. Let me explain why I'm bringing the two together. The likenesses are many. You see, if someone is in a position of authority in an organization, all right? They don't wake up and get there. It takes many years of working, experience, doing all sorts of things. Is that not so?
Yes.
And there is usually a board that decides. You don't decide for yourself. Somebody else decides on your behalf.
Right.
Now, if you talk about a rotational president, you are forcing people within a region to sit and discuss and agree on who should represent them.
Right.
So already you're bringing cohesion into that in that particular region, and even among themselves they will understand that. By the way, this discussion looks like we're going to start promoting BBI here, because if you
BBI does not have this proposal, by the way.
No, of course it doesn't. But I'm going to tell you why I'm saying this. If you look at the proposal that they have of deputy this, assistant this, vice this, and all the other, you see, it also comes into the discussion. So it's not just the presidency that's rotational, but even, and Eric, it's you who brought this up, the other positions that are available are also rotational.
Would then be rotational.
Yes,
and that's why I said
they're appointed.
This is a time when these leaders are talking about this now. When it has been raised before, they've skirted that issue. Anyway, Ed, thank you very much. Let's hear from other callers as well.
Okay.
Have a good day. Mohammed in Mokijembe, good morning.
Thank you, sir.
How are you today?
Mimi nashukuru waungwana. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, Mohammed.
Mimi narejelea mazungumzo yangu kila
Yale tu, endelea tafadhali.
Yale ya kuzunguka mbuyu tu, amka asubuhi, amka jioni, lala wewe mnazunguka mbuyu. Can't we have conversation which have solutions? Can't we have conversation which are result oriented?
Kama gani baba?
Jambo tunaongea lakini tunakuwa na suluhisho na tunakuwa na matokeo. Sio kila siku asubuhi mazungumzo Kiingereza nyingi kama yule mbunge alisema, sijui nani amesema anaongea Kiingereza kingi kwa bunge lakini hakuna kitu anafanya. Sasa kwa hivyo wazee, hiyo yote corruption, rotation, kabila hii yote hakuna suluhisho.
Kwa nini unasema kuna suluhisho? Na kusema hivyo ni kutafuta suluhisho, sio?
Because morally we are rotten. We have to inculcate moral values in ourselves. And I hope you people, the media, should emphasize on that very much.
Naomba nikuulize swali.
Uliza baba.
Can we not inculcate morality while political systems also have their say and their day in the sun? Because this is what political systems and political people in the political playground are saying, that this is what we'd like to do. Can't that issue and the discussion of morality also find a place within a political discussion?
You know, at the end of the day, politics in maisha, bwana. It's our life. We want it to be good, we'll make it good. We want it to be bad, it will be bad. Siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. Mzee alisema marehemu. So in politics, let us put the forefront issue of moral values. So then we'll have a very clean politics which will be good for our maisha.
Right.
Siasa nzuri, maisha mzuri. Lakini nataka nyinyi wana media wote, si ati Spice FM, kila media, kuna hizi talks au hizi shows za kuentertain. Mimi nakubali kuwa entertained. Lakini at the same time, tunakuwa na show ambayo we have solution, we have results. Sasa mkileta wataalamu, nyinyi pia mkichangia, nataka emphasize hii issue ya moral values.
Kila siku.
Kila siku, mpaka hata mtoto anaenda shule anafundishwa ABCD kila siku mpaka anajua.
You are our resident preacher on this matter, Mohammed, and we thank you very much for this.
Kwa hivyo mimi nawaomba sana, I request you humbly, please emphasize on those issues. Please.
Asante.
I beg you.
Asante, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Maina in Nairobi, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today, Maina?
Very, very well. Spicy time, you guys. It's always a pleasure catching up with the discussion.
Asante sana.
I wanted to make a contribution about the issue of rotational presidency.
Yes.
Well, I listened to the president again in his speech at that funeral in Western Kenya, and my takeout was he was not necessarily rubber stamping rotational presidency. In fact, he started his statement by saying, if that's the logic, and referring to the idea that we have divided the citizenry into clusters of those who have and those who don't.
Yep.
The dynasties versus Hadla.
Yep.
I mean, it's and he was saying if it's as simple as that, if it's as simple as having clusters and groups, then I could also argue based on the same foolishness that it's time to have rotational presidency. So, in my view, rotational presidency is weak. It is very simplistic. I think it only serves to further tribal chauvinism. And
So what would you prefer, sir, since this is simplistic and it clearly doesn't hold any water?
Well, for the sake of argument, I would say there is need to have some sort of pride in culture or in tribe. However, the idea that we let other people, come up with a leader just based on the argument of tribe only, I think it's simplistic. It doesn't hold ground at all, because we're trying to it's called social stratification. We're going to like paint one huge cluster of people with one broad brush. You are this, you are that. You cannot do this because you are that. I think it's very foolish. It's very simple, and that's what we are running away from the whole time in this country. We want people to have a broader view of the world, a broader view of themselves, for the sake of fostering national unity. So I don't think rotational presidency holds any ground. It is as foolish as saying haves and have not. We just
So
clustering.
both of them to you are just non-starter arguments.
Yeah, we
Sawa
when you
Moina.
What if what you are referring to as nonsense actually represents a reality? Are we then going to say that this reality that we live with every day is nonsensical?
No, it's not really nonsensical. It's only that we are not looking at the broader picture. We are not willing to open our eyes and see the bigger picture, and we want to be myopic and just maintain that discussion of tribe, belonging. And that is what has always killed us and divided us, because we judge people based on simply
the
where
tribe that they
from.
come from.
Yeah, we don't care about education or their worldview or their arguments. I mean, nothing else holds merit other than their tribe.
Okay. Okay, Maina, thank you very much. We hear you. Let's hear from Moigai in Kahawa Sukari. Moigai, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today, Moigai?
I'm doing well, thank you. And you?
We are very well, thank you. The idea of a rotational presidency, how does it sit with you?
I think rotational, and I want to support what Maina has said.
Yep.
The basis of the rotation is the issue, because we want, we don't want to have a kingmanship for a long time. So, and that is what our constitution allows, succession. But by and large, talking about, the basis of tribal or region is divisional, if you ask me. And the reason is, today we should be looking on how to unite Kenyans and avoid, to accept that, we are a tribal conglomeration of our people.
Right.
Yeah, so we should be looking for ideals that are nationalistic, so that doesn't matter where the person is coming from. The ideals that they will sell to this country, they will be acceptable, and therefore we can vote for them, regardless of, the tribe or the region. And therefore they are able to support the whole country. But having, accepting our faults as a country and saying that, we'll accept these and therefore we divide. Tomorrow, even within the region, people will start saying now, is this tribe within the region, because there are regions with two tribes which are taken. So that division can go on and on and on and on. So what we need is what Mohammed has said. Can we look for ethos and things that can unite the country and rally the country to one things that unites us as a Kenyan?
Let me ask you, do you think that if every leader who was chosen, or if Kenyans made decisions based on moral values, then nobody would be concerned about where a particular leader came from? If everything was done clean, with no issues, everybody was working within the lines of integrity, morals were through the roof.
If you champion nationhood.
So do you think that if those things were working in this country, nobody would really be bothered that their tribe was not represented? Do you think so?
Not really. Actually, the human being looks for reasons to divide each other and to hate each other. Yesterday you had the gentleman from Uganda saying that they don't have a tribal issue despite having many tribes, but they have reasons to divide them. Look at Tanzania and what Mwalimu Nyeri was able to do to unite the country despite so many tribes. He was able to bring them together. If you look at an example of Ethiopia, for example, today the divisions they are having is because they are reverting back to the tribal politics, which I think in the days of Haile Selassie, he was able to ride above. So for me, when you see national leaders who are able to gather support from every other corner of this country, reverting to the default factory settings, I think it's not a good thing. We should not give up.
So it may be just a short-term solution, but a problem will still reemerge somewhere in a different way. Thank you very much, Moigai. Let's hear from Blackwater in Mombasa. Blackwater, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, guys. How you guys doing?
Very well, thanks.
Fine. Okay, this is my take on this issue, right? I think the rotational thing should go more on a provincial level. whereby and we could even have the IABC do a lottery every time, every 5 years. It's a lottery on TV, and you put your hand in and say, okay, now the next president will be coming from Eastern, whatever, or Costco, for example, right?
Yep.
Then you put your hand in there again. Okay, now the vice president has to come from this part of the country. It's a lottery. So once you do it that way, you force even the parties, right? You don't have this tribal party. You don't know who's next. So the parties become very strong and have everybody included in every different party. Every tribe will be in there. So anybody can get to the top. You know? And that's how I look at it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but that's my take. Because the biggest issue we have in Kenya is every time we have an election, we're fighting because a particular tribe or a particular group of people are the only ones who are going to the top.
Okay.
So they have a reason to steal. They have a reason to cheat because you by any means necessary to get to the top, you're going to do it. But when it's unpredictable, then you don't know where to be.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you,
You know what I mean?
Blackwater. Thank you.
All
Getting
right,
you very
have a
well.
good day.
Cheers.
Have a lovely one as well. Right. So, opinions for and against. Those that are saying, if you go this route, you're not solving anything. And those that are saying, maybe it starts now creating more unity, or everybody starts feeling that they have participated in nation building, or that their person has got into that position. So those that maybe feel that certain sections of the country have been favored before because of the president coming from their backyard, then you'll also have someone coming from there. Then they'll have that lived experience, as you call it, City. So when you have a Taita who's now become a president and you see what they did in your backyard, then you start saying, okay, it's not the tribe, it is the character of the person. Then you get now maybe moving to that other position. But then also on the other hand, if you look at Tanzania and the Nyeri example, and where now they're having a conversation, how many people are considering what tribe the president comes from or the vice president?
They may think about it, but it doesn't take center stage.
It doesn't take center stage. It's not
at
important.
the center of what they're really concerned about.
Ours is. It is at the center of the
front row.
Kabisa, and all of the seats around the center. So, you see, if in any attempt to try and find a resolution to a problem, one of the things that must be done, and this is really the most difficult thing, is to actually face the reality of it and say, this is actually what it is.
Accept that
not
this
what
is
I would
the
like
problem.
it. Not what I would like it to be, but this is what it is. When Senator Ledama referred to us as a tribal nation, how very true it is. It isn't a surprise. We are. But the other thing which isn't spoken of often enough, we're not as tribalistic as people assume we are. We are not. Our tribalism comes to the fore during the political silly season.
Look, the tribalism that Kenyans practice is amongst yourselves.
It's a garden variety type of tribalism.
Right?
Yes.
Kenyans come together when there's an external threat, by word, by deed, or by thought. The tribalism that we speak of now disappears when there's an external threat. So it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter who is standing
unified.
next to each other.
Yeah.
It is internally that you can have a problem, but now dare you attack my family. And then that's where you see a
changes
problem. Everybody
altogether.
comes together and all dynamics change.
Okay, coming to the end of the show, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Very many of you also expressing your views on social media. Not a bad idea, but it should be after 2032, after Ruto akimaliza zake 10. Hey, sawa Mohammed. Mogo says, it's not about which tribe, but driving this tribe agenda. We are driving this tribe agenda too far. City, today's proverb.
When the mouse laughs at the cat, there is a hole nearby.
Mouse, cat, hole.
Whole house. Whole security. Part of the reason why our politicians entertain us with the very horrendous and destructive theatrics that they put us through is because they know they can get away with it.
They know there's a hole nearby.
There's a hole nearby.
Okay. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Join us again tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We'll have more and more conversations of this nature, and we'll also invite you to join in and contribute to them. Now until 3, music. 3 until 7, drive. 7 until 10, adults. Tomorrow, we'll be here. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Have a lovely day.
Spice up your life. Spice up your life.
All right, are you ready?
Cruising through the golden years on 94.4 Spice FM.